Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 was betrayed and found the Chaquetrix, the Dark Evolution beyond Omnitrix, Ben 10 x Gwen Tennyson x Charmcaster. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Fracture. The familiar weight of responsibility had long ago settled into Ben Tennyson's shoulders, becoming as much a part of him as the Omnitrix itself. Standing Otto, the gleaming skyscraper that housed Plumber Headquarters Earth Division, he watched the sunset paint Bellwood in hues of amber and crimson. 10 years had transformed both the city and the man who protected it. Neither resembled what they had once been. A cool autumn breeze ruffled his dark brown hair as he absently ran his thumb across the Omnitrix. The device had evolved alongside him, sleeker now than its bulky predecessor. Emerald light pulsing gently against his skin. At 24, Ben had outgrown the cocky teenager he'd once been, though the shadow of that boy still emerged in the Alf smile that occasionally crossed his face. "Beautiful view," came a voice from behind him. "Though I doubt that's why you're brooding up here instead of attending the briefing." Ben didn't turn as Rook Blanco stepped beside him. The Ravanagonder's feline features had hardened over the years, his once earnest expression now perpetually guarded. Their partnership had weathered countless battles, though lately, a subtle distance had grown between them, something neither acknowledged aloud. "Just needed some air," Ben replied, his green eyes still fixed on the horizon. "The same mission reports get repetitive after a while. Perhaps you are avoiding Magister Hulka after your disagreement yesterday." Ben's jaw tightened. Wasn't a disagreement. Calling out illegal experimentation as just following protocol. Something Hulka used to care about. The Magister insists those allegations are unfounded. And you believe him. Rook's silence spoke volumes. "That's what I thought." Ben finally turned to face his partner. "The plumbers have changed, Rook. We both know it. Ever since the hybrid attempted their second invasion, the old rules don't seem to apply anymore. Adaptation is necessary for survival. There's adaptation, and then there's whatever this is." Ben gestured toward the building beneath them. "Genetic experimentation on detained aliens. Off-book missions. Weapons development that violates galactic treaties. That's not the organization we signed up for." Rook's expression remained carefully neutral. "The universe is not the same place it was 10 years ago, Ben. Perhaps certain compromises are necessary. That's exactly what they want us to think." Ben stepped closer, lowering his voice despite their isolation. "Look, I found something in the restricted archives. Project Chimera. It's worse than we thought. They're not just studying alien DNA, they're weaponizing it. Forcing incompatible genetic material to merge. The test subjects," he faltered, the images still fresh in his mind. "No one survives the process. Not completely." "How did you access restricted archives?" Rook's eyes narrowed. "Those require Magister-level clearance." Ben hesitated, suddenly aware of the shift in his partner's tone. "Does it matter?" "What matters is what they're doing down there. It matters because unauthorized access to classify information is a violation of your oath as a plumber." Rook's hand drifted toward his proto-tool. "Ben, as your friend, I am asking you to come with me to explain this to Magister Hulka. Perhaps there is an explanation. An explanation for bodies in containment pods. For aliens being dissected while still conscious." Ben took a step back. "Listen to yourself, Rook. Since when do we look the other way for this kind of thing? Since the safety of billions depends on our ability to counter threats by any means necessary." Rook's voice hardened. "The hybrid nearly succeeded last time. The Incursines grow bolder each year. The plumbers must evolve beyond simple peacekeeping. By becoming the very threat we're supposed to fight." Ben shook his head. "I don't buy it, and I didn't think you would either." A moment of tense silence stretched between them, 10 years of partnership balanced on a knife's edge. "The Magisters warned me you might have been compromised." Rook's fingers closed around his weapon. "Your recent behavior, your questions, your unauthorized investigations. They feared outside influence." Ben's blood ran cold. "They've been watching me, my own team. We have all been concerned, Ben." Rook's expression softened slightly. "Your obsession with conspiracy theories, your growing paranoia. It's not paranoia when the evidence is right there. Ben's voice rose, echoing across the rooftop. I've seen the labs, Rook. I've seen what they're doing to those people. Then show me, properly, through channels. For a moment, hope flickered in Ben's chest. You'll come with me, tonight. I can show you everything. Rook hesitated, then nodded. We will follow protocol. Report to Magister Hulka. Request a formal investigation. Hulka is part of it. You cannot know that. I saw him there, in the lab. Ben ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Rook, we can't trust anyone in the command structure right now. The Ravanagander studied him for a long moment, then slowly lowered his hand from his weapon. Very well, show me this evidence first, then we decide our next steps together. As partners, relief washed over Ben. Despite their recent distance, their partnership still meant something. Thank you. We'll go tonight, after shift change. Fewer eyes that way. Rook nodded, though something in his expression remained guarded. I should return to the briefing before my absence is noted. 19th sublevel, restricted section. Yeah, I'll meet you at the maintenance entrance at 2100 hours. As Rook turned to leave, Ben called after him. And Rook, don't tell anyone about this. Not until we know who we can trust. His partner paused, then nodded once before disappearing through the rooftop access door. Alone again, Ben turned back to the cityscape, now draped in deepening twilight. The weight on his shoulders felt heavier than before. For 10 years, the plumbers had been his family, his purpose. The thought that he organization had rotted from within left a hollow feeling in his chest. His communicator buzzed, a message from Gwen. Still on for dinner tomorrow. Bringing research I promised. Found something NTE resting about that energy signature you mentioned. A small smile touched his lips. Some connections remained unchanged, at least. He typed a quick confirmation, then pocketed the device. Whatever happened tonight, whatever ugly truths lurked in the sublevel laboratories, Ben knew the world would look different by morning. He just didn't realize how different it would be. The maintenance corridor hummed with the gentle vibration of environmental systems. Ben checked his watch. 2115 hours. Rook was late, unusual for someone typically punctual to a fault. Unease prickled at the back of his neck. The Omnitrix glowed softly in the dimness as Ben made his decision. He couldn't wait any longer. If Rook had been delayed, or worse, detained, lingering here only increased the risk of discovery. The maintenance access panel yielded to his security override, one of the few benefits of his senior agent status. The tunnel beyond descended in a gentle spiral, emergency lighting casting alternating pools of light and shadow. Level by level, Ben descended deeper into the heart of plumber headquarters than most agents ever ventured. The standard issue badge at his hip would track his movements. But he'd long ago learned to manipulate its signal, a trick picked up from an unexpected source. Thanks for something, Kevin, he muttered, remembering his former friend with a mixed regret. Their paths had diverged years ago, with Kevin choosing to pursue his own interests in the shadowy corners of the galaxy. At the 19th sublevel, Ben paused at the security door. Unlike his previous unauthorized visit, this time he came prepared. From his pocket, he withdrew a small device of Galvan design, another remnant of his complicated friendship with Kevin. The bypass tool made short work of the security measures, and the door slid open with a soft pneumatic hiss. The laboratory beyond appeared deserted at first glance, pristine white surfaces gleaming under harsh fluorescent lighting. Workstations lined the walls, each displaying holographic data in languages from across the galaxy. But Ben's attention fixed on the far wall, where a row of containment pods stood like coffins on display. Inside each, a figure floated in translucent fluid. Some appeared humanoid, others decidedly alien, but all bore the unmistakable signs of genetic tampering, mismatched limbs, structural anomalies. Tissue that seemed to shift between different species. Most disturbing were their expressions, frozen in moments of agony. Evidence hiding in plain sight, Ben whispered, activating the recording function on his badge. This time, he'd document everything. He moved methodically through the laboratory, capturing footage of each atrocity. Computer terminals yielded to his access codes, courts. Why of borrowing Magister Hulka's credentials during their last confrontation. Project files revealed the scope of Chimera, not merely experimentation, but preparation for implementation on a massive scale. Phase 3 implementation scheduled for next month, Ben read aloud, scrolling through the document. Target: human population centers. Initial subjects: 10,000 civilians. His blood ran cold. They're planning to use this on Earth first. A sound from behind, the whisper of a door sliding open. Ben ducked behind a containment pod, heart hammering in his chest. "I told you he would return," came Magister Hulka's unmistakable gruff voice. Tennyson never could follow orders. "It is regrettable," Rook's voice, tinged with what sounded like genuine remorse. "I had hoped he would see reason." Ben's stomach clenched. Betrayal tasted like ash in his mouth. "He's been compromised by sentiment," another voice added, Magister Cornick, the facility's director. "Too long among humans, too attached to outdated ideals. The plumbers must evolve beyond such limitations. The Chimeran Initiative represents our future," Hulka stated flatly. "Controlled evolution, directed adaptation. The next stage in our mandate to protect the galaxy. By experimenting on innocent beings." Ben couldn't contain himself any longer, stepping out from his hiding place. "By planning to mutate Ivalians without their knowledge or consent." The three figures turned toward him, Hulka with cold disdain, Cornick with clinical interest, and Rook. Rook's expression remained carefully neutral. Huff something like regret flickered in his eyes. "Ben Tennyson," Cornick said, as if greeting an expected guest. "Your dedication to investigation is commendable, if misguided. You see only the necessary sacrifices, not the greater purpose they serve." "I see torture," Ben countered, gesturing to the pods. "I see violation of every law the plumbers are sworn to uphold." "Laws evolve as necessity demands," Hulka growled. "The threats we face have grown beyond conventional response. The hybrid nearly succeeded in their genocide. The Incursines expand their territory daily. Vilgax gather forces at the edge of our jurisdiction. So your answer is to become worse than all of them combined." Ben's hand hovered over the Omnitrix. "To experiment on sentient beings and plan mass genetic manipulation of Earth's population. Your perspective is limited by your attachment to your human identity," Cornick said softly. "We take a broader view. Species adapt or perish. This is universal law. We merely guide that adaptation toward beneficial outcomes. There's nothing beneficial about this." Ben gestured to the pods. "Those were people, with lives, families, rights. They were volunteers," Hulka stated. "Liar." Ben's voice echoed through the laboratory. "I've seen the acquisition records. Abductions disguised as terrorist incidents. Disappearances covered up as accidents." Rook stepped forward, proto-tool still holstered. "Ben, please, stand down. There are aspects to this situation you do not understand." "I understand enough." The Omnitrix hummed beneath his fingers. "This ends tonight. I'm shutting down Project Chimera and exposing everything." Cornick sighed, a sound of genuine disappointment. "We had such hopes for you, Ben Tennyson. Your genetic adaptability, your symbiosis with the Omnitrix, you could have been our greatest success story." The implication struck Ben like a physical blow. "You were planning to use me as a test subject." "Not a test subject," Hulka corrected. "The template, your unique physiology, combined with the Omnitrix's capability for genetic manipulation, the perfect foundation for controlled human evolution." Ben's gaze snapped to Rook. "Did you know about this part of the plan?" The moment of hesitation told him everything. "I am sorry, Ben," Rook finally said. "The future of the galaxy outweighs individual concerns. Even yours, even mine." With practiced precision, Ben activated the Omnitrix, the familiar green light washing over him as his DNA reconfigured. Where Ben Tennyson had stood, swampfire now towered, antimatter crackling with bio-organic energy. "I won't let you do this," he growled, voice deepened by transformation. Hulka drew his weapon, a modified energy pistol unlike standard plumber issue. "Disable the Omnitrix. Non-lethal measures only. We need him intact." The first blast caught Swampfire in the shoulder, but instead of the expected impact, something different happened. The energy meant to interact with his transformed DNA in unexpected ways, sending waves of agony through his system. Ben felt the transformation destabilizing, the Omnitrix on his chest flickering erratically. Interesting reaction, Korenik observed dispassionately. The suppression field affects the Omnitrix's stabilization matrix. Rook circled to Ben's left, Prototool configured to capture mode. Ben, please, do not force this confrontation. Quote, through waves of pain, Swampfire hurled fireballs toward the laboratory equipment, igniting research stations and sending alarms blaring throughout the facility. If I'm going down, he growled. Your research goes with me. The containment pods, thankfully, appeared flame-resistant, the unfortunate subjects inside protected from the spreading fire. Emergency systems activated, spraying fire suppressant from ceiling nozzles. Hulka fired again, the blast catching Swampfire directly in the chest. The Omnitrix symbol sparked violently, and Ben felt him. Self-changing, not reverting to human form, but shifting uncontrollably between alien forms. Diamond Head's crystalline structure formed on one arm while XLR8's scaled skin appeared on the other. His too. RSO fluctuated between Big Chill's ethereal form and Humungosaur's armored hide. The Omnitrix is destabilizing, Korenik announced, seemingly fascinated despite the chaos. This could provide valuable data for the integration phase. Through fragmenting consciousness, Ben focused on escape. With a surge of desperate strength, he drew on 4 arms' power to smash through the laboratory wall into the adjacent corridor. Alarms wailed, emergency lights bathing the hallway in pulsing red. Security protocols would lock down the sublevel within minutes. After him, Hulka barked. Full containment protocols. Ben staggered forward, his body a patchwork of different alien physiologies. The Omnitrix continued to spark and pulse erratically, each flash sending fresh waves of pain through his system. He needed to get to the surface. To get clear of whatever suppression field was affecting the device. A blast from behind selling onto his back, he found Rook advancing steadily, Prototool aimed at his center mass. Do not make me do this, Ben, his partner pleaded, genuine anguish breaking through his professional facade. Surrender, and I will ensure you are treated with dignity. Like your other test subjects. Ben managed, his voice shifting between aliens mid-sentence. Through the haze of pain, clarity struck him. He'd been blind to the changes happening around him, blind to corruption spreading through the organization he'd trusted. Perhaps even blind to the gradual shifting of his partner's loyalties. Forcing himself to his feet, Ben lunged forward with Chaquetrix's speed. Colliding with Rook before his former partner could react. The impact sent them both crashing into a wall, the Prototool clattering away across the floor. I trusted you, Ben hissed, pinning K with Humungosaur's strength while his face shifted between forms. I thought after everything we'd been through. The galaxy is changing, Rook responded, struggling against the hold. We must change with it or be left vulnerable. The plumbers are adapting to new realities. By becoming the very monsters we fought against. Pain lanced through Ben as the Omnitrix flared again. His grip weakened, allowing Rook to break free and retrieve his weapon. Not monsters, Rook corrected, configuring the Prototool to its most powerful setting. Architects of necessary evolution. The blast hit Ben squarely, sending him through the emergency exit doors and into the stairwell beyond. He tumbled down a flight of stairs, each impact sending fresh agony through his unstable form. The Omnitrix symbol now flashed between green and red, its normally stable interface corrupted by whatever energy Hulka's weapon had employed. Distant shouting echoed down the stairwell, security teams mobilizing, containment protocols engaging. Ben forced himself upright, using the railing for support as he continued his desperate ascent toward the surface. 18 levels to go, with his body failing and former allies in pursuit. The next 4 levels passed in a blur of pain and determination. Twice he encountered security teams, both times using the chaotic mixture of alien abilities to evade capture. Ildmut's senses warned him of approaching threats while Chaquetrix's intangibility allowed him to pass through barriers. The uncontrolled shifting between forms proved unpredictable but occasionally advantageous. At sublevel 14, a security bulkhead slammed down, nearly crushing him. The facility had entered full lockdown. Ben Tennyson, Magister Hulka's voice boomed through the communication system. You are experiencing severe Omnitrix malfunction. Return to sublevel 19 for stabilization treatment. So you can finish what you started. Ben muttered, scanning his surroundings for alternatives. The ventilation system caught his eye. large enough for most of his alien forms to navigate. With Wildvine's elastic limbs, he pried open the access panel and pulled himself into the ductwork. The metal groaned under his shifting weight as he crawled forward, guided by instinct and fragmented memories of the facility's layout. The ventilation system would lead to the Environmental Control Center on Sublevel 10, which had an emergency evacuation route, mandatory for all critical infrastructure. Behind him, the sounds of pursuit grew more distant, though he harbored no illusions about having lost them. The plumbers' tracking systems would detect his Omnitrix signature regardless of where he hid. His only hope lay in reaching the surface and finding help outside the organization, someone he could still trust. The thought of Gwen brought momentary comfort. His cousin had left the plumbers years ago to pursue independent research into the intersection of magic and technology. She'd warned him then about changes she'd observed in the organization, concerns he'd dismissed as paranoia. "Should have listened to you, Gwen," he whispered as he continued his painful journey through the ventilation system. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, Ben reached the Environmental Control Center. The room stood empty, evacuated during the security alert. Monitors displayed the facility's status. Full lockdown, all non-security personnel directed to safe rooms, exterior defenses activated. The emergency evacuation tube stood in the corner, a gravity assist transport system designed to rapidly evacuate essential personnel in case of catastrophic facility failure. It would deposit him in a secure bunker a mile from the main building, bypassing all intervening security measures. As Ben staggered toward the tube, the Omnitrix flared again, this time with such intensity that he collapsed to his knees. The device seemed to be fighting against the corruption, its self-repair systems battling whatever damage Hulka's weapon had inflicted. "Warning! Critical system failure imminent," the Omnitrix announced in Azimuth's voice, a failsafe message Ben had heard only once before. Initiating emergency protocols. A surge of energy erupted from the device, temporarily stabilizing Ben in human form. The reprieve from pain left him gasping on the floor, sweat-soaked and trembling. The Omnitrix on his wrist now displayed unfamiliar symbols, its interface reconfiguring as emergency protocols engaged. With renewed determination, Ben dragged himself to the evacuation tube. The system required authorization, but in emergency mode, it would accept any plumber badge. He pressed his badge against the scanner, praying the system wouldn't recognize his compromised status. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, with a mechanical whir, the tube activated, its interior illuminating with soft blue light. "Emergency evacuation authorized," the system announced. "Please secure all loose items before transport." Ben pulled himself into the tube just as the control room doors slid open. Magister Hulka stood in the doorway, flanked by security officers and Rook. Their expressions shifted from determination to alarm as they realized his intention. "Tennyson, stop," Hulka bellowed. "The Omnitrix is critically unstable. You'll destabilize completely outside containment." Ben met Rook's eyes one final time, searching for any remnant of the partnership they'd once shared. Finding nothing but cold resolve, he made his decision. Better unstable and free than a lab rat for monsters wearing plumber badges, he declared, activating the transport sequence. The tube sealed around him as Hulka lunged forward. Gravity reversed, and Ben felt himself accelerated upward at tremendous speed, the tube's magnetic field protecting him from the worst effects of rapid acceleration. Through the transparent walls, he watched sublevel after sublevel flash past, a blur of infrastructure and alarmed faces. The journey lasted less than 30 seconds before depositing him in the evacuation bunker. Designed for emergency situations, the facility contained basic supplies, communication equipment, and a single exit leading to the surface. Ben staggered toward the exit, each step requiring monumental effort. The Omnitrix continued its erratic behavior, though the emergency protocols seemed to be containing the worst of the instability. Outside the influence of whatever suppression field had affected him in the laboratory, the device was gradually regaining functionality. The night air hit him like a physical force as he emerged from the bunker. Stars wheeled overhead, the city lights of Bellwood visible in the distance. Freedom, temporarily at least. Though Ben harbored no illusions about what would follow. The plumbers would hunt him relentlessly, not just as a rogue agent, but as an essential component of their twisted evolution project. He needed somewhere to hide. Somewhere to recover and plan his next move. Gwen was the obvious choice, but her connection to him would make her the first person they'd monitor. Kevin was off-world, unreachable. His parents' homike sparked again, drawing his attention. The interface had stabilized somewhat, but displayed unfamiliar patterns, emergency protocols reconfiguring the device's functionality to compensate for damage. Limited transformation ability might be possible, but highly risky in the device's current state. A distant whine of engines cut through his deliberation. Aerial seer. CH vehicles deploying from Plumber headquarters. His window of opportunity was closing rapidly. With no better options, Ben activated the Omnitrix. The holographic interface responded sluggishly, playing alien forms he barely recognized, corrupted versions of his usual transformations, their appearances twisted by the device's damaged state. "Please work," he muttered, selecting what appeared to be a variation of XLR8. Just long enough to get somewhere safe. The transformation washed over him, but instead of the familiar feeling of his DNA reconfiguring, something different occurred. It lanced through every cell as his body changed, the process slower and somehow more fundamental than usual transformations. When it completed, Ben found himself in a form similar to XLR8 but noticeably different, darker coloration. More pronounced musculature, and an almost predatory aspect to the typically streamlined appearance. The speed remained, however, perhaps even enhanced. With no time to analyze the changes, Ben surged forward, leaving the evacuation bunker behind in a blur of motion. The night landscape streaked past as he pushed this new form to its limits, putting as much distance as possible between himself and his pursuers. Only one destination made sense, a location known to almost no one, not even his closest allies. Years ago, during a particularly difficult case involving dimensional incursions, Ben had discovered an abandoned Galvan research outpost hidden deep in the mountains 100 miles from Bellwood. He'd kept its existence secret, preserving it as a potent IAL sanctuary should the need ever arise. That need had now come with a vengeance. Hours later, exhaustion forced Ben to revert to human form. The transformation back proved nearly as painful as the initial change, leaving him breathless and disoriented at the base of the mountain range that concealed his destination. The Omnitrix, at least, seemed to have stabilized further, its interface now playing a consistent pattern though still unfamiliar in configuration. The final leg of his journey required climbing, a challenging prospect in his weakened state. Nevertheless, Ben began the ascent, each handhold and foothold a small victory against the fatigue threatening to overwhelm him. Dawn broke as he neared the concealed entrance, painting the mountainside in shades of gold and amber. The entrance, disguised as a natural rock formation, responded to the Omnitrix's signature, sliding open to reveal a darkened corridor beyond. Ben collapsed inside, allowing the security system to reseal the entrance behind him. Emergency lighting activated automatically, illuminating a space untouched for years yet maintained by automated systems. Safe, he whispered to himself, though the word rang hollow. Nothing felt safe anymore, not after discovering the corruption at the heart of the organization he'd dedicated his life to, not after his partner's betrayal, not with the Omnitrix damaged and his future uncertain. Still, this sanctuary offered temporary reprieve, time to recover, to assess the damage to the Omnitrix, and to plan his next move. The facility contained communication equipment that might allow him to contact Gwen securely, though doing so carried significant risk. For now, Ben dragged himself to the facility's medical bay. Galvan technology far surpassed Earth medicine, and while the equipment here was decades old by their standards, it remained advanced enough to treat his immediate injuries. The diagnostic scanner hummed as it passed over his body, displaying results on a holographic interface. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Omnitrix's damage extended beyond the device itself. Whatever energy Hulka's weapon had employed had affected the symbiotic relationship between Ben and the Omnitrix, altering the way his DNA interacted with the transformative capabilities. The changes appeared stable for now, but the long-term implications remained unclear. More immediately concerning, the scanner detected a tracking signal embedded within his plumber badge, expected, but also a secondary signal originating from within his bloodstream. Nanoscopic trackers, likely injected during a routine physical examination weeks earlier. Preparation for his eventual recruitment into Project Chimera, no doubt. They really did plan everything, Ben muttered. The full extent of the betrayal still sinking in. The medical system offered a solution for the blood-borne trackers, a filtration procedure that would remove the foreign bodies from his system. The process would take hours and leave him weakened, but the alternative meant eventual discovery. As the medical system began its work, Ben's thoughts turned to the future. Exposing Project Chimera remained his priority, but doing so would require evidence more substantial than his testimony alone. The recording he'd made in the laboratory remained in his badge, now a liability due to its tracking capabilities. The Omnitrix on his wrist pulsed softly, drawing his attention. Despite the damage, despite the corruption, it remained his greatest asset, and potentially the key to stopping whatever plans the plumbers had set in motion. Understanding the changes to the device would be essential. Hours later, the filtration procedure complete, Ben examined the results. The nanoscopic trackers had been removed, their components preserved for potential analysis. His badge lay deactivated in a shielded container, preventing its signal from broadcasting his location while preserving the evidence it contained. The facility's communication system allowed limited connectivity to outside networks. Using protocols designed for covert operations, Ben established a heavily encrypted connection and composed a message for Gwen. Compromised. Plumbers involved in illegal experimentation. Need assistance analyzing tech and biological samples. Bringing evidence. Will contact with secure location. Trust no one wearing a badge. After sending the message through a series of relays designed to mask its origin, Ben turned his attention to the Omnitrix. The device had continued its self-repair process. Its interface now stabilized though still displaying unfamiliar configurations. Accessing its diagnostic functions revealed the extent of the changes. The weapon used against him had been designed specifically to disrupt the Omnitrix's function, not to destroy it, but to destabilize it enough to facilitate its removal and analysis. An unintended consequence, however, had been the merging of certain safeguards within the device's programming, allowing access to genetic combinations previously locked by Azimuth's security protocols. In essence, the damage had partially unlocked the Omnitrix, revealing capabilities beyond its standard function, capabilities that, based on the diagnostic information, bore similarities to other devices created by Azimuth but never publicly deployed. Ben's exploration of these newfound capabilities was interrupted by an alert from the facility's perimeter sensors. Something had triggered the outer detection grid, something large and moving with purpose. The security system displayed visual feed from concealed cameras, revealing a plumber transport vehicle navigating the rough terrain below. That was fast, Ben muttered, though he felt a flicker of relief. That at least they hadn't yet pinpointed his exact location. The mountain range contained numerous potential hiding places. The search would take time even with advanced technology. Still, remaining in one location for too long invited discovery. Ben needed to understand the changes to the Omnitrix and formulate a plan quickly. The facility's database contained N-Galvan technology, most of it dated but potentially useful in understanding the device's current state. As he combed through the information, a particular reference caught his attention, a theoretical project mentioned in passing. Described as Omnitrix Evolutionary Variant, designation Ultimatrix. The description matched certain aspects of the changes he'd observed, particularly the enhanced forms of his transformations. Further research yielded another, more obscure reference, a conceptual precursor to the Omnitrix itself, designated Chaquetrix, in ancient Galvan texts. Unlike the Omnitrix's preservation of genetic samples, the Chaquetrix had been designed to actively evolve those samples, adapting them to new conditions and combining traits for optimal functionality. The project had been abandoned due to ethical concerns about uncontrolled genetic manipulation. Ethical concerns never stopped Azimuth before, Ben murmured, examining the Omnitrix with newfound understanding. The damage, combined with the emergency protocols, appeared to have activated dormant programming within the device, programming that bore striking similarities to the theoretical Chaquetrix design. The implication both troubled and intrigued him. If the Omnitrix was evolving along these lines, it might provide capabilities beyond anything he'd previously wielded, capabilities that could prove essential in exposing and stopping Project Chimera. However, the ethical concerns that had led to the Chaquetrix's abandonment suggested potential dangers in its use. A soft ping from the communications system interrupted his research. Gwen had responded to his message. Her reply characteristically concise but loaded with meaning. Message received. Secure location prepared. Bringing specialized equipment for analysis. Not alone. Have contacted independent ally with expertise in unique energy signatures. Rendezvous at the place where we found the first one. Tomorrow, midnight. The first one referred to their discovery of the RST Omnitrix crash site all those years ago, a location significant to them but unlikely to be immediately obvious to anyone intercepting the message. The independent ally raised questions, but Ben trusted Gwen's judgment implicitly. If she'd brought someone else into this situation, she had good reason. With a rendezvous established, Ben turned his attention to preparation. The facility contained limited supplies, emergency rations, basic equipment, and a few technological artifacts left behind by its Galvan creators. Among these, he discovered a device designed for energy analysis, Potentia. LLY useful in understanding the changes to the Omnitrix more thoroughly. The perimeter alert sounded again, this time indicating multiple vehicles converging on the mountain range. The plumbers were expanding their search, methodically covering the territory in a grid pattern. While the facility's shielding should prevent detection of energy signatures, physical discovery remained a possibility if they were thorough enough. Ben needed to test the Omnitrix's new capabilities before attempting to leave. Better to discover any limitations in the safety of the facility than in the middle of a confrontation. Accessing the holographic interface, he selected what appeared to be a variation of Diamond Head, bracing himself for the transformation process. The change came more smoothly than before, suggesting the device had further stabilized. The form he assumed resembled Diamond Head but with significant differences: darker crystalline structure with red energy pulsing through fissures in the surface, more pronounced protrusions, and an overall more aggressive aspect to the typically defensive form. Definitely not standard issue, Ben observed, his voice deeper and resonating with crystalline overtones. Testing revealed enhanced capabilities, stronger crystalline projections, finer control over their formation, and the unexpected ability to absorb and redirect certain energy types. The transformation also felt different somehow, more complete, as if he'd become the alien rather than merely assuming its form. Reverting to human form proved easier than expected, the process almost seamless compared to the painful transitions earlier. The Omnitrix, or perhaps the Chaquetrix now, seemed to be adapting to the changes, integrating them into its operational parameters. A third perimeter alert, this one much closer, forced Ben to accelerate his preparations. The plumbers had narrowed their search area significantly, with one team approaching the ridgeline near the facility's concealed entrance. Discovery now seemed inevitable unless he moved immediately. Gathering the essential evidence, the deactivated badge containing laboratory footage, samples of the nanoscopic trackers, and a portable data storage device containing his research on the Omnitrix's changes, Ben prepared for departure. The facility's rear entrance opened onto a narrow trail that descended the far side of the mountain, away from the approaching search teams. As he secured the last of his supplies, a final alert sounded: proximity detection at the main entrance. They had found him. Ben activated the Omnitrix, selecting the enhanced XLR-8 form from earlier. The transformation washed over him smoothly, leaving him in the darker, more predatory version of the speed-based alien. Through enhanced senses, he detected movement outside the entrance, the distinctive sound of a proto-tool configuring for breach mode. "Sorry, Rook," he muttered, though no real regret colored the words. "Not today." With blinding speed, Ben shot through the rear entrance, the rocky trail blurring beneath his feet as he accelerated down the mountainside. Behind him, the facility's security protocols engaged its final defense. A controlled implosion that would seal the entrance without causing a detectable explosion. The evidence of his presence would be buried under tons of rock, buying him precious time to reach the rendezvous point. The mountain terrain passed in a blur as Ben pushed his enhanced form to its limits. The differences from the standard XLR-8 became increasingly apparent: greater endurance, sharper reflexes, and a predator's instinct for avoiding detection. He found himself instinctively choosing paths that offered cover, moving in patterns designed to confuse pursuit, behaviors embedded in this evolved form's genetic memory. By midday, he had put significant distance between himself and the search teams, the mountain range now a distant silhouette on the horizon. Fatigue forced him to revert to human form in a densely wooded area, the relative safety allowing a brief rest. The Omnitrix, Chaquetrix, continued its evolution, the interface now displaying a distinctive pattern unlike anything Ben had seen before. The familiar green had darkened to emerald with occasional pulses of crimson energy, reminiscent of the energy he'd observed flowing through his transformed state. "What are you becoming?" he whispered to the device, receiving only a soft pulse of light in response. As sunset approached, Ben resumed his journey, this time selecting a different transformation, an enhanced Veer. Scion of Stinkfly that offered aerial mobility with less energy consumption than XLR-8's speed. The form proved even more dramatically altered than previous transformations, sleeker, with darker colorati on and more pronounced predatory features. The typically unpleasant odor had transformed into a controllable secretion, deployable as either an offensive measure or a means of covering his scent trail. From the air, Ben observed plumber vehicles moving along highways and back roads, the search expanding beyond the mountains to surrounding areas. They would be monitoring transportation hubs, population centers, and known associates. The rendezvous location, however, lay in an isolated rural area unlikely to receive immediate attention, a small blessing in an otherwise increasingly dire situation. Night had fallen by the time Ben reached the vicinity of the crash site where his Johos years ago. The forest had reclaimed much of the area, erasing the scorched earth and impact crater that had once marked the Omnitrix's arrival on Earth. Now, only those who had been present would recognize the location's significance. Reverting to human form in a secluded clearing, Ben approached cautiously. The Omnitrix had stabilized further during his journey, its interface now consistently displaying the new configuration. While many functions remained familiar, others had transformed entirely, off-earing capabilities he had yet to fully explore. A soft rustling from the trees alerted him to another presence. Ben tensed, hand hovering over the Omnitrix, ready to transform at the first sign of threat. "Easy," came a familiar voice as Gwen stepped into the clearing. "It's just us." The sight of his cousin brought a wave of relief so profound it nearly buckled his knees. Gwen had changed in years since they'd worked together regularly, her hair longer, her bearing more confident, the magical energy that surrounded her more controlled and refined. She wore civilian clothing rather than a plumber uniform, having left the organization years earlier. "You got my message," Ben stated unnecessarily, tension bleeding from his shoulders. "Hard to miss an SOS that dramatic," Gwen replied, approaching cautiously. Her eyes fixed on the Omnitrix, narrowing slightly at its altered appearance. "What happened to you? And what happened to the Omnitrix?" "Long story short, the plumbers aren't what we thought they were. They're running experiments, genetic manipulation, forced evolution, plans to implement it on civilian populations. They wanted the Omnitrix as the template, me as the first subject." The words tumbled out, the reality of the situation still raw. Rook was part of it. Hulka, all of them. Gwen's expression darkened. "I warned you something was changing in the organization. The energy patterns around their facilities have been shifting for months, darker, more chaotic." "You were right. I should have listened." Ben glanced around the clearing. "You said you weren't alone." "She's securing the perimeter," Gwen explained, "making sure we weren't followed. She's the one who noticed the energy fluctuations first, been tracking similar patterns across dimensions." Before Ben could question further, another figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, with striking silver-white hair and features that managed to be both familiar and dramatically changed, Hope, once known as Charmcaster, approached with the confident grace of a practiced sorceress. "Tennyson," she greeted, her voice lacking the antagonism that had characterized their earlier encounters. "Seems you've finally managed to get yourself into trouble even your precious plumbers can't get you out of." Ben stared, momentarily speechless. "Charmcaster, she's your independent ally." "Hope," the sorceress corrected. "I haven't used that other name in years. And yes, I've been working with Gwen on tracking unusual energy signatures across dimensional boundaries. Your plumber friends have been causing Uite the disturbance in the magical spectrum. Gwen stepped forward, her expression serious. Ben, show me the Omnitrix. Whatever they did to it, it's radiating energy unlike anything I've ever sensed from it before. Ben extended his wrist, allowing both women to examine the device. It's changing. Their weapon was supposed to destabilize it for removal, but it triggered something else instead. Based on what I found in the Galvan database, it's evolving into something called a Chaquetrix, a theoretical precursor to the Omnitrix designed for genetic evolution rather than preservation. Hope's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. The dark mirror, she murmured, earning questioning looks from both cousins. There are legends in the magical community about a device that could reshape life itself, not just transform it temporarily like your watch, but evolve it permanently. The descriptions match what I'm sensing from your device now. Whatever it's becoming, Gwen added, we need to understand it quickly. The plumbers have already expanded their search beyond Bellwood. They've issued an interplanetary alert naming you as a rogue agent who stole classified technology. Classified technology they were using to experiment on innocent people, Ben countered bitterly. I have evidence. Recordings from their labs, samples of their tracking technology, documentation of their plans. Good, Hope stated firmly. You'll need it, but first, we need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't think to look for you. I've prepared a location, Gwen explained. A pocket dimension, connected to a physical space they don't know about. Hope helped establish the magical barriers. It should be undetectable by plumber technology. Ben nodded, fatigue catching up with him now that the immediate danger had passed. Thank you, both of you. He glanced at Hope, curiosity overriding exhaustion. I have to ask though, why help me? Last I checked, we weren't exactly friends. A hint of her old smirk crossed Hope's face. Let's just say I have a vested interest in preventing anyone from monopolizing power over life itself. Especially government agencies with questionable ethics. Her expression softened slightly. Besides, Gwen vouched for you. That counts for something these days. The subtle exchange of glances between the two women suggested a deeper connection than mere professional collaboration. But Ben was too exhausted to pursue that line of questioning now. The past 24 hours had shattered his world completely, his career, his partnerships, his identity as a hero within the system. Nothing remained but the core of who he was and what he stood for. And the device on his wrist, evolving into something both ancient and new, something with the potential to either counter the threat he'd uncovered or become a greater danger itself. Lead the way, he said simply, following as Gwen opened a portal of shimmering violet energy. We've got work to do. As the portal closed behind them, the clearing returned to darkness, silent except for the distant sound of plumber search vehicles moving through the night. The hunt continued, but their quarry had vanished. Head into spaces they couldn't follow, at least for now. In the heart of the Chaquetrix, power pulsed and evolved, resonating with its wearer's DNA in ways neither fully understood. Ancient programming awakened, responding to the threats arrayed against its host. Protection protocols engaged, adaptation sequences initialized. The symbiosis deepened, transforming both device and bearer. The fracture had begun. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Dark Evolution. The pocket dimension Gwen had created existed in the space between spaces, a realm of her own design connected to the physical world through a single, heavily warded doorway. From the outside, it appeared as nothing more than an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of a small coastal town 300 miles from Bellwood. Inside, however, stretched a complex of rooms and open spaces bathed in perpetual twilight, magical energy humming softly through the very fabric of the environment. Ben sat cross-legged in the center of a circular chamber, eyes closed in concentration. 3 days had passed since his escape from the plumbers, 3 days of recovery and research. The Chaquetrix, as they'd taken to calling the evolved Omnitrix, pulsed softly against his wrist, occasionally emitting tendrils of emerald energy that traced patterns across his skin before dissipating. Your breathing is uneven, Hope observed from where she leaned against the chamber's wall. The connection won't stabilize if you can't maintain focus. Ben opened one eye, irritation flickering across his features. Maybe I'd focus better without running commentary. Maybe you'd focus better if you actually listened to the running commentary, she countered, pushing away from the wall to circle him. Her long silver hair was pulled back in a practical braid. Her clothing a far cry friar of her Charmcaster days, simple dark pants and a fitted tunic embroidered with subtle magical sigils. The Chaquetrix isn't just responding to your conscious commands. It's connecting to your entire being, mind, body, even what some might call soul. It's alien technology, not magic, Ben muttered, though without much conviction. The line between the two had blurred considerably in recent years, particularly since Gwen had begun her independent research. Technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic, Hope quoted with a hint of a smile. An magic sufficiently understood becomes indistinguishable from technology. The Chaquetrix exists at the intersection of both. Ben closed his eyes again, attempting to recenter himself. The meditative techniques Hope had been teaching him seemed ridiculous at first, more suited to Gwen's magical practices than his own pragmatic approach to the Omnitrix. Yet the results were undeniable. Each session strengthened his connection to the transformed device, granting greater control over its evolving capabilities. Clear your mind, Hope instructed, her voice softening slightly. Feel the energy patterns within the device, how they mirror your own. The Omnitrix merely sampled DNA, allowing temporary transformation. The Chaquetrix seeks symbiosis, mutual evolution. Ben focused on the sensation of the device against his skin. Unlike the Omnitrix's familiar weight, the Chaquetrix seemed almost alive, warm to the touch, its energy pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. As his concentration deepened, he sensed something beyond the physical, patterns of information flowing between himself and the device, communication on a level beyond words. Images formed behind his closed eyelids, flashes of memories not his own. A vast chamber filled with technology unlike anything he'd ever seen. Beings with elongated features speaking in voices that seemed to resonate directly in his mind rather than through his ears. The same symbol that now adorned the Chaquetrix, carved into stone monuments that predated even Galvan civilization. I'm seeing something, Ben murmured, careful not to break his concentration. A species, creators, but not Galvan. Something older. Describe them, Hope urged, her voice betraying genuine interest beneath her usual composure. Tall, slender, almost luminescent skin, six-fingered hands. They're working with something, energy patterns similar to the Chaquetrix, but on a much larger scale. Some kind of matrix or network. As Ben spoke, the Chaquetrix pulsed more intensely, the emerald energy now forming coherent patterns around his seated form. The alien script that occasionally appeared on its interface now projected into the air around him, rotating slowly like the pages of an ancient text. Hope moved closer, studying the projections with narrowed eyes. Can you understand any of it? Not exactly, but, Ben frowned in concentration. I feel like I almost can. Like the meaning is just beyond my grasp. The sound of the chamber door opening broke Ben's concentration, the projections dissipating instantly. Gwen entered, carrying a tablet filled with data displays. Sorry to interrupt, she said, noting Ben's frustrated expression, but I've finished analyzing the nanite trackers you brought. They're more sophisticated than anything the plumbers should have access to. The technology appears to be derived from galvanic mechamorph components, but modified with something else I can't identify. Ben rose to his feet, shaking off the lingering disorientation from the meditation session. Any way to track the source? Not directly, Gwen replied, handing him the tablet. But I've identified a unique radiation signature in the components. If we can find other technology with the same signature, we can start mapping their operation, Ben finished, scanning through the data. Good work. Hope moved to examine the information over his shoulder, her proximity causing Ben to tense slightly. Despite 3 days of working together, the history between them created an undercurrent of wariness that neither fully acknowledged. This energy pattern, she noted, pointing to a particular reading. It bears similarities to what we observed in the dimensional disturbances last month. Gwen nodded. I noticed that too. Whatever they're doing, it's causing ripple effects across multiple planes of existence. Project Chimera, Ben murmured. They called it the next stage in evolution, controlled adaptation to ensure survival. But the methods, he trailed off, the memories of the containment pods still vivid in his mind. Speaking of evolution, Gwen said, changing the subject with obvious intent, how are the sessions going? Any progress with the Chaquetrix? Before Ben could respond, A soft alarm sounded throughout the pocket dimension. Gwen immediately moved to a nearby console, fingers dancing across its surface. "Perimeter alert," she announced. Tension evident in her voice. Something triggered the outer wards. "Plumbers?" Ben asked, instantly alert, hand hovering over the Chaquetrix. "No," Gwen replied, studying the readings. "Different energy signature. Single individual, apparently human, but carrying technology with unusual properties." Hope joined her at the console. "The pattern matches those nanite components. Related technology, at least. Could be a trap," Ben warned, already moving toward the exit. "I'll check it out." "Not alone," Gwen insisted, following. "We don't know what capabilities these people have." Outside the warehouse, twilight painted the abandoned industrial district in shades of purple and deep blue. The coastal town beyond remained mostly dark, its small population already retired for the evening. Ideal for their purposes, isolated enough to avoid casual discovery, yet connected enough to access necessary resources. The perimeter wards Gwen and Hope had established extended in a quarter-mile radius around the warehouse, designed to alert rather than defend. Better to know of potential threats before they arrived than to reveal their presence with obvious magical defenses. Ben activated the Chaquetrix, its interface displaying the now familiar evolved forms of his transformations. After brief consideration, he selected what had once been Wildmutt, now a darker, more streamlined predator with enhanced sensory capabilities they'd dubbed Nightstalker. The transformation washed over him smoothly, his consciousness expanding to encompass the evolved alien's sensory perception. Scents, sounds, and even subtle vibrations in the air painted a vivid landscape of information more detailed than human senses could comprehend. A familiar scent caught his attention immediately, human female, with distinctive traces of specialized technology and a unique biochemical signature he recognized from years past. Not a plumber, but someone equally dangerous in her own way. Ben growled softly, causing Gwen to glance at him sharply. "What is it?" she asked, magical energy gathering around her hands in preparation for conflict. Ben reverted to human form, his expression a mixture of surprise and wariness. "Elena Validus. She's about 300 yards west, moving cautiously toward the warehouse." "The nanite girl." Gwen's eyebrows rose. "What would she be doing here?" "I don't know, but she's alone." Ben frowned. "At least, she appears to be. With her nanite abilities, appearances can be deceiving." Hope joined them, having secured the warehouse entrance. "Who is Elena Validus?" "Former plumber's kid," Gwen explained quickly. "Her father was infected with alien nanites years ago. The technology eventually affected her as well, giving her control over the microscopic machines but also influencing her mental stability. She was obsessed with Ben for a while," she added, casting a sidelong glance at her cousin. "It was the nanites," Ben corrected automatically, though the defense sounded hollow even to his own ears. "They affected her behavior, made her fixate. And yet, here she is," Hope observed dry Ross the country when you're supposedly in hiding. Quite the coincidence. Before Ben could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows between distant warehouses, a woman in her mid-20s with dark hair and intense eyes that seemed to reflect the dim light. Elena Validus moved with the fluid grace of someone who had become more than human, each step precise and deliberate. "I know you're there, Ben," she called, her voice carrying easily in the quiet night. "I can sense the energy signature of the Omnitrix, even in its altered state." Ben stepped forward, positioning himself between Elena and his companions. "How did you find me, Elena?" She stopped a cautious distance away, studying him with an unreadable expression. "The nanites in my system are sensitive to certain energy patterns. The Omnitrix has always produced a distinctive signature. When it suddenly changed 3 days ago, I noticed." A hint of something like concern crossed her features. "What happened to you, Ben?" "The plumbers are calling you a traitor. Claiming you stole experimental technology." "The plumbers aren't what we thought they were," Ben replied carefully, watching for her reaction. "They're running experiments, dangerous ones. Project Chimera mean anything to you?" Elena's expression darkened instantly. "More than you know." She glanced past him to Gwen and Hope, wariness evident in her posture. "This isn't a conversation we should have in the open. If I found you, others might too. Why should we trust you?" Gwen asked directly. "Last time we met, You weren't exactly stable. I've changed, Elena stated simply. The nanites and I have reached an understanding. Symbiosis rather than parasitism. Her gaze returned to Ben. Something I suspect you're experiencing yourself now, based on what I'm sensing from that device. Ben exchanged glances with Gwen and Hope, a silent conversation passing between them. After a moment, he made his decision. We have a secure location, but I need some assurance you're not leading the plumbers or anyone else to us. Quote. Elena nodded, then held out her hand. The skin of her palm seemed to ripple, nanites emerging to form a small, complex device. This will scramble any Traken. G signals within 50 meters of my person. I've been using it to avoid plumber detection myself. Her expression hardened. I have my own reasons for staying off their radar. Hope stepped forward, magical energy shimmering around her fingertips. I'll verify it's what she claims, she said, extending her hand toward the device without actually touching it. After a moment, she nodded. The technology is legitimate, though unusually advanced. Elena was always brilliant with technology, Ben noted, memories of their earlier encounters surfacing. Before the nanite infection, before the obsession, Elena had been one of the most promising young engineers in the Plumbers Auxiliary program. All right, you can come inside, but we'll need to take precautions. Elena accepted this with a nod, following as they led her toward the warehouse. Hope remained behind her, a subtle but unmistakable magical barrier maintained between them. Gwen walked ahead, preparing the entrance to admit their unexpected visitor while maintaining the pocket dimension's security. The transition from the abandoned warehouse to the pocket dimension caused Elena to pause momentarily, her eyes widening as she too came in the impossible space that opened before them. Impressive, she murmured, glancing at Gwen with newfound respect. Dimensional engineering on this scale requires incredible precision. It's more art than engineering, Gwen replied, a hint of pride in her voice despite her continued wariness. Magical architecture responding to intent rather than pure mathematical calculation. The group made their way to a central chamber that served as both meeting area and research space. Holographic displays showed ongoing analysis of the evidence Ben had gathered, while books of both magical and scientific nature lined the walls. The convergence of different disciplines reflected the unusual alliance that had formed in recent days. Now, Ben said, turning to face Elena once they were secure inside. Explain how you know about Project Chimera, and why you've been avoiding the plumbers. Elena studied him for a moment, her dark eyes unreadable. Then, with a sigh, she rolled up her sleeve to reveal her forearm. What appeared at first glance to be an intricate tattoo resolved on closer inspection into a network of nanites just beneath her skin, forming patterns that pulsed with subtle blue light. Because I was almost one of their test subjects, she stated flatly. My nanite infection made me an ideal candidate for Phase 1 trials. My father discovered their plans and warned me, just before he disappeared 6 months ago. Ben's expression darkened. They took your father, or worse, Elena replied, the nanite pattern on her arm pulsing more intensely with her emotional response. He left me coordinates to a secure server with evidence he'd gathered. I've been accessing it piece by piece, trying to understand the full scope of the project. She gestured to the holographic displays. But it seems you've discovered some of it yourself. Show us what you know, Gwen prompted, moving to the central console. We can compare notes. Elena nodded, the nanites in her ND reforming into a small data drive which she handed to Gwen. Everything I've gathered so far. Locations of suspected Chimera facilities, personnel involved, theoretical frameworks for the genetic manipulation processes. As Gwen integrated the new information with their existing data, Ben studied Elena more carefully. The erratic, emotionally unstable woman he remembered had been replaced by someone more controlled, more focused. The nanites that had once dominated her now seemed to exist in a balanced relationship with their host. You said you and the nanites reached an understanding, he noted. How? A hint of a smile touched Elena's lips. Necessity is a powerful motivator. When I learned what the plumbers planned to do with me, with us, the survival instinct was mutual. The nanites don't want to be weaponized any more than I do. She glanced at the Chaquetrix on his wrist. Speaking of evolution, what happened to the Omnitrix? Before Ben could respond, Gwen called their attention to the holographic display. now showing a map of global locations with pulsing indicators. Alina's data confirms our suspicions and adds significantly more. The Chimera project isn't isolated to Bellwood's Plumber Base. It's a worldwide initiative with at least 12 major facilities. 17. Hope corrected, studying the display with narrowed eyes. These 5 locations show the SAM-E energy signature in the dimensional readings we took last month. She pointed to sites scattered across different continents. That fits with what I found, Elena added, stepping closer to the display. The project has 3 phases. Phase 1 was proof of concept, controlled genetic manipulation of alien subjects. Phase 2 expanded to willing human subjects with specific genetic markers or existing alien DNA exposure. And Phase 3 is mass implementation, Ben concluded grimly. Starting with population centers on Earth before expanding to other planets. Exactly, Elena confirmed. But there's something else, something my father discovered before he disappeared. She accessed the console, bringing up a different set of data. The Chimera project isn't just about creating human-alien hybrids. It's about creating specifically weaponized hybrids with programmed loyalty structures. Mind control, Gwen translated, disgust evident in her voice. More subtle than that, Elena clarified. The genetic modifications include neurological components that create predispositions toward certain behavioral patterns. Subjects maintain the illusion of free will while operating within parameters established during the transformation process. That explains the willing human subjects, Hope noted. Most people become weapons. They don't know that's what they're becoming, Elena said softly. They're told they're receiving evolutionary advantages to help humanity face extraterrestrial threats. Enhancements to strength, intelligence, sensory capabilities. Which is technically true, Ben observed bitterly. Just not the whole truth. As the implications sank in, the Chaquetrix on Ben's wrist pulsed suddenly, projecting symbols into the air above the console. The alien script rotated slowly, then began to align with certain elements of the displayed data, creating connections that hadn't been visible before. What's happening? Elena asked, watching in fascination as the projection expanded. The Chaquetrix is integrating with the information, Hope explained, studying the patterns. It's identifying correlations between the Project Chimera data and its own internal database. Ben stared at the projections, understanding flowing into his mind as if the device were communicating directly with his consciousness. It's showing us connections between Chimera's genetic manipulation techniques and ancient methods developed by the Chaquetrix's creators. You can understand that writing? Gwen asked, surprised. Not exactly, Ben replied, struggling to articulate the experience. It's more like, the understanding comes directly, bypassing language entirely. The Chaquetrix is translating concepts rather than words. The projections shifted again, focusing on one particular facility located in the mountains of northern New Mexico. The site pulsed with greater intensity than the others, the Chaquetrix's symbols clustering densely around it. That facility is important, Ben stated with certainty. It contains technology or information directly related to the Chaquetrix's original creators. My father's last message mentioned that location, Elena confirmed. Surprise evident in her voice. He called it the Nexus, but didn't explain further. Hope studied the projection thoughtfully. If the plumbers discovered technology from the Chaquetrix's creators, it could explain how they developed such advanced genetic manipulation techniques so quickly. And why they wanted the Omnitrix so badly, Gwen added. Not just for its genetic samples, but because it might interface with whatever they found. We need to investigate that facility, Ben decided, the Chaquetrix pulsing in what felt like agreement. If there's a connection between Project Chimera and the Chaquetrix's creators, understanding it could be key to stopping their plans. It won't be easy, Elena warned. According to my father's notes, that facility has security measures beyond standard plumber protocols. Some kind of adaptive defense system specifically designed to counter alien abilities. Fortunately, Ben replied, a determined expression settling on his features. The Chaquetrix isn't just about alien abilities anymore. It's about evolution, adapting to overcome challenges. Hope raised an eyebrow. You sound eager to test that theory in the field. 3 days of meditation and research can only tell us so much, Ben countered. At some point, we need to act on what we've learned. I agree we need to investigate, Gwen interjected, but we should approach this strategically. Alina's information gives us an advantage, but we still don't know exactly what we're walking into. As they discussed potential approaches, the Chaquetrix's projection shifted again, displaying what appeared to be a schematic of the facility's security systems. Details emerged layer by layer: external defenses, internal layouts, personnel rotations. Is that coming from Alina's data? Gwen asked, studying the increasingly detailed display. No, Elena replied, equally surprised. My information doesn't include anything this comprehensive. All eyes turned to Ben, who stared at the projection with a mixture of fascination and concern. It's coming from the Chaquetrix itself. I think it's accessing information from its original programming. Maybe even memories from previous encounters with similar technology. Previous encounters? Hope questioned sharply. You mean from before you acquired it? Ben nodded slowly. The meditations say, Sages have been revealing fragments of the device's history. I think it existed long before it became part of the Omnitrix's design architecture, as a separate entity with its own purpose. Which was what, exactly? Gwen asked, the unspoken concern evident in her tone. I'm not entirely sure yet, Ben admitted. But based on what I've glimpsed, the Chaquetrix was created as a tool for guiding evolution across multiple species, helping them adapt to changing conditions or threats. A noble purpose, Hope observed, though one with significant potential for misuse. Like all power, Elena added quietly. The projection completed its display of the facility, highlighting potential entry points and vulnerabilities in the security system. The Chaquetrix seemed to be actively suggesting a strategy, identifying optimal approaches based on their combined capabilities. Well, Ben said after studying the completed projection, at least we won't be going in blind. We still need to prepare, Gwen insisted. If this facility is as important as we think, they'll have their best people guarding it. And we have no idea what alien technology they might have adapted for their defense systems, Hope added. I can help with that, Elena offered. The nanites can interface with most technology, potentially allowing us to bypass security systems without triggering alarms. Ben nodded, a plan beginning to form. We'll need to coordinate our abilities carefully. Gwen's magic for detection and shielding, Hope's dimensional knowledge if we encounter any portals or transport systems. Alina's nanite capabilities for technological interference, and the Chaquetrix for adaptation to whatever defenses we encounter. When do we move? Elena asked. Tomorrow night, Ben decided. You say the intervening time to prepare based on the information we have. Rest, equipment checks, strategic planning. As the others moved to begin preparations, Hope pulled Ben aside, her expression serious. The Chaquetrix is becoming more active in guiding your decisions, she observed quietly. Are you certain you're the one directing it, rather than the other way around? Ben glanced down at the device, its surface pulsing gently against his wrist. We're reaching an understanding, he replied, echoing Alina's earlier words about her nanites. Symbiosis rather than control in either direction. Just be careful, Hope warned. Ancient powers rarely come without complex agendas of their own. Dreams came to Ben that night, more vivid than any he had experienced before. Not the fragmented images of normal sleep, but coherent scenes playing out with perfect clarity, memories not his own, transmitted through his deepening connection with the Chaquetrix. He stood in a vast chamber, its walls composed of a crystalline material that seemed to capture and amplify light from an unseen source. Around him moved the beings he had glimpsed during meditation, tall, graceful creatures with luminescent skin and six-fingered hands. Their language filled the air, incomprehensible yet somehow familiar, as if he had once known it but forgotten. In the center of the chamber stood a device that resembled the Chaquetrix in its underlying structure, though vastly larger and more complex. Energy patterns flowed through it, connecting to similar smaller devices worn by several of the beings. One approached him, or rather, approached whoever's perspective he was experiencing. The being's features were androgynous by human standards, but conveyed wisdom and authority. When it spoke, Ben understood despite the alien language. The network expands as intended, the being stated, gesturing toward the central device. Evolutionary guidance proceeds across 17 systems. The flourishing approaches its next phase. Resistance continues among the dissenters, replied THN was experiencing this memory through. They claim we overreach our mandate, that species should evolve without intervention. An expected philosophical divergence, the leader acknowledged. But the evidence supports our approach. Guided species demonstrate 87% greater adaptation success in crisis scenarios compared to control groups. The cosmic preserve must be maintained. The scene shifted, jumping forward in time. The same chamber, but now in disarray. Warning lights pulsed along the crystalline walls, and the central device emitted erratic energy patterns. The dissenters have corrupted the network. Someone shouted, fingers moving frantically across control interfaces. Evolutionary protocols are inverting, promoting aggression and dominance rather than adaptation and balance. Sever all connections, the leader commanded. Initiate emergency containment. Too late, came the response. The corruption has already spread to 14 systems. Guided species are developing along destructive pathways. The cosmic preserve is fracturing. Another shift, another jump in time. The chamber now darker. Emergency systems the only remaining light source. Few of the tall beings remained, their luminescence dimmed by exhaustion or injury. The network must be dismantled, the leader stated, voice heavy with resignation. Each guidance node separated and secured until the corruption can be purged. The flourishing has failed, and the corrupted species, asked the perspective Ben experienced. We have no choice but to enact the quarantine protocol. Dimensional barriers will isolate the affected systems until natural evolution can correct our interference. The leader's expression conveyed deep regret. Trillions will suffer for our hubris. There must be another way, Ben's perspective argued. The guidance nodes could be reprogrammed, used to counter the corruption rather than containing it. Too dangerous, another being interjected. The corruption adapts to our attempts at control. Each intervention only accelerates the damage. The leader considered for a moment, then nodded toward the smaller device worn by Ben's perspective. Your node remains uncorrupted. Take it and go. Preserve what we intended, not what we became. Perhaps in time, when the corruption has faded, the work can begin anew. I cannot abandon our people, came the protest. Our people are already lost, the leader replied gently. The dissenters have won this struggle. But the principles of the flourishing must survive. Evolution guided toward harmony rather than dominance. Balance rather than power. You must ensure this knowledge endures. The scene dissolved, fragments of subsequent events flashing by too quickly to fully comprehend. Escape, pursuit, a desperate journey across stars and dimensions. The node, the original Chaquetrix, adapting to protect its bearer, evolving its own capabilities in response to threats. Then darkness, a sense of dormancy lasting eons. Brief awakenings as the device passed from one bearer to another, each understanding only portions of its true purpose. The knowledge fragmented, the mission forgotten, until eventually the technology itself was discovered by a young Galvan scientist named Azimuth, who incorporated elements of its design into his own creation, the Omnitrix. Ben awoke with a gasp, the Chaquetrix pulsing rapidly against his wrist. The dreams, no, memories, lingered with perfect clarity, filling gaps in his understanding of the device's origins and purpose. The flourishing, he murmured, the term feeling significant though he couldn't fully grasp its meaning. A soft knock at his door preceded Gwen's entrance, concern evident on her features. Ben, the energy readings from the Chaquetrix just spiked dramatically. Are you okay? He sat up, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, I'm fine, just receiving information. The Chaquetrix is showing me its history. Gwen sat on the edge of his bed, studying him carefully. What kind of history? Ben related what he had seen, watching as Gwen's expression shifted from concern to fascination. So the Chaquetrix was created by an ancient species to guide evolution positively, but a faction corrupted the system. That's what it showed me, Ben confirmed. And the sea eruption led to species developing along aggressive, destructive paths rather than balanced ones. Which could explain a lot about the state of the universe, Gwen noted thoughtfully. If multiple species were affected by this corruption, it might account for the prevalence of conquest-oriented civilizations we've encountered. The hybrid, the Incursines, even the Contemmelia in their way, Ben agreed. All focused on dominance rather than coexistence. And now the plumbers are developing technology that pushes human evolution in a similar direction, Gwen concluded. History repeating itself. Not if we can help it, Ben stated firmly, rising from the bed. The Chaquetrix wasn't just showing me history, it was explaining why stopping Project Chimera matters beyond just Earth. Is could be part of a pattern that's affected the galaxy for millennia. Gwen studied him for a moment, then nodded. Get dressed. The others are already preparing for tonight's mission. We could use your input on the final approach strategy. In the central chamber, Hope and Elena were reviewing the facility schematics projected by the Chaquetrix the previous evening. Both women looked up as Ben and Gwen entered, something in their expressions suggesting they'd been discussing more than just mission parameters. Sleep well? Hope asked, a knowing look in her eyes that made Ben wonder if I'd somehow sensed the Chaquetrix's activity during the night. Informatively, he replied, moving to join them at the central console. The Chaquetrix has been filling in some historical blanks. Care to share with the class? Elena prompted, curiosity evident in her tone. Ben summarized what he had learned, watching their reactions carefully. Hope's expression remained thoughtful, while Elena's eyes widened at the implications. So this device, Elena gestured to the Chaquetrix, was part of a network designed to guide species toward beneficial evolution, but a rival faction corrupted the system to promote aggression instead. Quote, that's the simplified version, yes, Ben confirmed. And you believe Project Chimera represents a continuation of that corrupted approach? Hope asked, though, her tone suggested she already saw the connection. The parallels are hard to ignore, Ben replied. Especially given the Chaquetrix's reaction to the facility we're targeting tonight. If the MBERS discovered technology from the original creators, or worse, from the corrupted faction, it would explain their rapid advancement in genetic manipulation techniques. It would also explain why they wanted the Omnitrix, Gwen added. If Azimuth incorporated elements of the original Chaquetrix into its design, the Omnitrix might interface with whatever they found. Which means we're not just dealing with plumber technology tonight. Hope concluded. We could be facing adaptations of an ancient, highly advanced alien system. All the more reason to proceed carefully, Ben agreed, turning his attention to the facility schematics. What have you two determined about our approach? Elena indicated a point on the mountain ridge above the facility. This location offers the best combination of cover and access. The facility's external sensors focus primarily on aerial and ground-level approaches, with less coverage of the steep terrain to the north. My magic can shield us from conventional detection methods, Hope added. But if they're using technology derived from the Chaquetrix's creators, we should assume they have countermeasures for energy-based concealment as well. We'll need a multi-layered approach. Ben decided, studying the schematic. Hope's magical shielding is our first line of defense. Elena's nanites to disrupt any technology that detects us, and the Chaquetrix ready to adapt to whatever we. Gwen asked. You're our tactical coordinator and emergency extraction, Ben replied. You maintain the dimensional pocket as our fallback position and monitor the overall situation. If things go sideways, you pull us out. Gwen nodded, though she clearly would have preferred a more active role. The pocket dimension can only extend so far from its anchor point. I'll need to establish a temporary focal point within range of the facility. Which means putting yourself at risk as well, Ben noted with concern. We're all at risk, Gwen countered firmly. But having an escape route that the plumbers can't block is worth it. The rest of the day passed in careful preparation. Equipment was checked and rechecked, contingencies discussed, roles clarified. Elena modified her nanite controllers to interface more effectively with potential security systems, while Hope prepared specialized magical artifacts designed to counteract various forms of detection. Gwen worked on establishing the parameters for a mobile dimensional anchor, and Ben spent time in meditation, deepening his connection with the Chaquetrix. As evening approached, Ben found himself standing alone on a balcony that overlooked the twilight landscape of the pocket dimension. The artificial sky above mimicked the real world's transition to night, stars gradually appearing in the deepening blue. Having second thoughts, came Hope's voice from behind him. Ben turned to find her leaning against the doorway, arms crossed casually though her eyes remained sharp and observant. Not about the mission, he replied honestly, but about what comes after. If we confirm the connection between Project Chimera and the Chaquetrix's creators, it changes the scale of what we're facing. Hope moved to stand beside him at the balcony rail, her silver hair catching the last light of the artificial sunset. You've faced galaxy-level threats before. How is this different? Because before, the lines were clearer. Ben admitted. Villains trying to conquer, heroes trying to stop them. This is about the fundamental direction of evolution itself, not just for humanity but potentially for all species. He glanced down at the Chaquetrix. And I'm not sure I should be the one making those kinds of decisions. Perhaps that's precisely why you should be, Hope suggested, surprising him. Those who question their right to power are often those best suited to wield it responsibly. Ben studied her for a moment, still adjusting to this more measured, philosophical version of the woman he'd once known only as an enemy. You've changed a lot since our early encounters. A hint of a smile touched her lips. Evolution, you might say. Though in my case, it came through hard experience rather than alien technology. She turned to face him directly. Running a sanctuary dimension for magical beings forces one to consider the nature of power and responsibility from many angles. Gwen mentioned your sanctuary, Ben noted. She said you've been providing refuge for magical entities displaced by the plumbers, more aggressive policies toward interdimensional visitors. Among other things, Hope confirmed. The lines between alien and magical have always been blurrier than most acknowledge. Many beings classified as magical are simply operating according to different physical laws than those of your dimension. Our dimension, Ben corrected automatically. Hope's smile widened slightly. I spend more time in the between than here these days. Perspective shifts accordingly. Before Ben could respond, Elena appeared in the doorway. It's time. Gwen has the transport ready. The moment of relative peace broken, they returned to the central chamber where Gwen stood before an activated portal. Unlike her usual teleportation spells, this doorway shimmered with a more complex energy pattern, a connection between their pocket dimension and a temporary anchor point she had established near their target. The anchor will remain stable for approximately 6 hours, Gwen explained as they gathered equipment. After that, the connection becomes unreliable. So whatever you find in there, be back before the 6-hour mark. And if we're not, Elena asked, securing her nanite controllers to her wrists. Then I come in after you, Gwen stated simply, her tone brooking no argument. But let's avoid that scenario if possible. Ben activated the Chaquetrix, reviewing the available transformations. The device had continued to evolve over the past days, its interface now displaying completely stable versions of the enhanced alien forms. After consideration, he selected an evolved version of Big Chill they dubbed Absolute Zero, a transformation that combined the original's intangibility and ice powers with significantly enhanced stealth capabilities and resistance to energy-based detection. The transformation washed over him smoothly, leaving Ben in a form that resembled Big Chill but with notable differences: darker coloration with deep blue energy patterns flowing across the surface, more pronounced features, and an aura of intense cold that crystallized the air around him. Ready, he stated, his voice carrying the same ethereal quality as Big Chill's but with a deeper resonance that seemed to echo from multiple sources simultaneously. Hope completed her own preparations. Magical energy now flowing through patterns embroidered into her clothing. In battle configuration, she looked nothing like the flamboyant Charmcaster of years past, her attire practical. Her magic focused and controlled rather than flashy. Elena's nanites had formed a second skin across exposed portions of her body, a protective layer that pulsed with subtle blue light. The technology would enhance her physical capabilities while providing direct interface with any systems they encountered. Remember the plan, Gwen reminded them as they approached the portal. Reconnaissance first. Identify the connection between the facility and the Chaquetrix's creators. Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. 6 hours, Ben confirmed, his alien form nodding. Once before leading the team through the portal, the mountain air hit them immediately, thin, cold, and carrying the scent of pine. They emerged on a rocky outcropping sheltered by ancient trees, the facility visible as a collection of lights approximately half a mile below. From this distance, it appeared to be a standard research installation, low-profile buildings nestled into the mountainside, perimeter fencing, and minimal external security visible. Deceptively mundane, Hope observed quietly, her magic already extending to create a detection barrier around them. But I'm sensing unusual energy patterns emanating from the central structure. The nanites confirm, Elena added, her eyes taking on a slight blue glow as she accessed their sensory capabilities. Multiple exotic energy signatures, heavily shielded but detectable with the right equipment. Ben scanned the facility, Absolute Zero's enhanced senses revealing details invisible to human perception. 3 layers of security, visible, technological, and something else. Energy patterns similar to what the Chaquetrix projects, but distorted somehow. Corrupted, Hope suggested. Possibly, Ben agreed. We'll need to get closer to confirm. They began their approach, moving silently through the forest that covered the mountainside. Hope's magical barrier rendered them effectively invisible to conventional detection methods, while Elena's nanites constantly scanned for and counteracted any technological surveillance they encountered. Ben remained in Absolute Zero form, his intangibility providing an additional layer of security should they encounter unexpected barriers. As they neared the perimeter, the Chaquetrix pulsed within Ben's transformed state, communicating information directly to his consciousness. Images of the facility's internal structure overlaid his perception, more detailed than the projections they had studied earlier. Most significant was a large chamber beneath the main Belden, accessible only through specific security protocols. There's something important underground, Ben informed his companions, his voice barely above a whisper despite their protective measures. The Chaquetrix is focusing on a chamber approximately 200 feet below the surface level. That matches what the nanites are detecting, Elena confirmed. The energy signatures are strongest from that location. Hope studied the facility's visible security measures. The question is how to access it without triggering every alarm in the place. Ben considered their options, then pointed to a smaller building near the perimeter. That structure houses an access point to the underground levels, maintenance systems rather than main corridors. Less heavily monitored. How do you know that? Elena asked. The Chaquetrix is accessing historical data about similar facilities, Ben explained. The design follows patterns established by its creators, certain architectural constants that appear regardless of who built it. Convenient, Hope noted with mild skepticism. Let's hope it's accurate, Elena added as they moved toward their new target. The perimeter fence posed no significant challenge, Hope's magic creating a temporary passage while Elena's nanites disrupted the electronic monitoring systems. They crossed quickly into the facility grounds, moving from shadow to shadow with practiced precision. The maintenance building appeared unoccupied, its windows dark save for the glow of security monitors. Elena approached the electronic lock, nanites flowing from her fingertips to interface with the system. Standard plumber security protocols, she murmured. With some modifications, but nothing the nanites can't handle. After a tense moment, the lock disengaged with a soft click. Ben phased partially through the door, confirming the interior was empty before signaling the others to follow. Inside, they found a simple control room monitoring various environmental systems throughout the facility, nothing that would immediately alert security to their presence. The access point should be here somewhere, Ben stated, searching the room. His alien senses detected subtle air currents suggesting hidden passages. Elena moved to a section of flooring that appeared slightly different from the rest. Nanites are detecting a shaft beneath this panel. Maintenance access to the lower levels. Working together, they removed the panel, revealing a narrow vertical shaft with ladder rungs built into one wall. Emergency lighting cast the passage in a dim red glow, ending downward farther than human eyes could see. I'll go first, Ben decided. If anything's waiting down there, Absolute Zero's intangibility gives me the best chance to avoid detection. Neither woman argued, though Hope maintained a magical tether connected to him as he descended, a precaution should they become separated. The shaft extended deep into the mountain, passing multiple levels of increasing security. Ben noted automated defense systems, motion sensors, and energy barriers, all of which the Chaquetrix identified and provided avoidance strategies for. After several minutes of careful descent, they reached a junction where the maintenance shaft connected to a larger service corridor. Unlike the utilitarian design of the upper levels, this area displayed technology far beyond standard plumber equipment. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with energy, patterns flowing beneath translucent surfaces reminiscent of the chamber Ben had witnessed in the Chaquetrix's memories. "This is it," he whispered as the others joined him. "This technology matches what I saw in the dreams, created by the same species that developed the original Chaquetrix." Hope studied the flowing patterns with narrowed eyes. "The energy signature is similar to what we detected in the dimensional disturbances, but more concentrated. Whatever they're doing here is causing ripple effects across multiple planes of existence." Alina's nanites had formed sensors across her palms, collecting data as she moved them near the walls. "The technology is interfacing with biological systems somehow. I am detecting patterns consistent with genetic manipulation on a fundamental level." The corridor extended in two directions, one leading toward what appeared to be laboratory spaces, the other toward the large chamber the Chaquetrix had highlighted in Ben's perception. After brief consideration, they chose the latter, moving carefully to avoid triggering any of the increasingly sophisticated security measures. As they approached the chamber, Ben sensed a dramatic increase in energy output. The Chaquetrix pulsed more intensely within his transformed state, responding to whatever lay beyond the massive doors that blocked their path. "This is definitely what we're looking for," he stated, studying the entrance. Unlike conventional doors, these appeared to be composed of the same energy-infused material as the walls. With no obvious opening mechanism, Elena placed her hands against the surface, nanites spreading to interface with the unknown technology. "It's communicating," she murmured, surprise evident in her voice. "The system is actively responding to the nanites, almost like it recognizes the technology." "Can you open it?" Hope asked, maintaining their protective barrier while constantly scanning for approaching security. "I think so," Elena replied, concentration evident in her expression. "The system isn't rejecting the connection. It's almost as if it's curious." After several tense moments, the massive doors began to part, energy patterns flowing more rapidly as they slid silently into recesses within the walls. Beyond lay a vast chamber that caused all three to stop in stunned silence. The space before them mirrored almost exactly what Ben had witnessed in the Chaquetrix's memories, a massive circular room with crystalline walls that captured and amplified light. In the center stood a device remarkably similar to the network hub from his dreams, though clearly adapted with plumber technology integrated into its ancient framework. Most disturbing, however, were the containment pods arranged in concentric circles around the central device. Each contained a subject in various stages of transformation, some human, some alien, all displaying evidence of the genetic manipulation Ben had witnessed in the Bellwood facility. "Project Chimera," Elena whispered, horror evident in her voice despite her usual composure. "This must be their primary research center." "It's more than that," Ben replied, the Chaquetrix providing information directly to his consciousness as he absorbed the scene. "This is a recreation of the original evolution network, the system that was corrupted in the Chaquetrix's history. They're not just experimenting with genetic manipulation, they're trying to rebuild the entire guidance system." "To what end?" Hope questioned, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer. "Control," Ben stated simply. "The corrupted version of the network didn't just promote aggression, it created hierarchy. Species that could dominate others. Civilizations built on conquest rather than cooperation. And with humans at the top of that hierarchy," Elena concluded. "Or at least, whoever controls the network." They moved further into the chamber, careful to remain undetected despite the apparent absence of personnel. The central device hummed with power, energy patterns flowing between it and the containment pods in rhythmic pulses that seemed to match the subject's biological processes. As they neared the center, the Chaquetrix's energy signature intensified dramatically. Ben felt the device attempting to communicate more directly with the central hub, recognizing it as part of its original network. "Be careful," Hope warned, sensing the energy exchange. "If that system connects with the Chaquetrix, it might corrupt it as well. Or the Chaquetrix might purify the system," Ben countered. "Remember, this device was preserved specified uncorrupted. It might represent a counter to whatever they're building here." Elena had moved to one of the control interfaces, nanites interfacing with the system to access information. "According to this data, they've been developing the network for over 5 years. Initial discovery of the technology occurred during an archaeological expedition to a previously uncharted system. The expedition that found the ruins of the Chaquetrix creators' civilization, Ben surmised. Pieces falling into place. That's when everything started to change. The plumbers, policies, their approach to alien threats, their interest in genetic research. They found the corrupted version of the technology, Hope concluded. And it's been influencing their development ever since. Not just influencing, Elena corrected, still accessing the system. According to these records, exposure to the technology affects neurological patterns in humans and most sentient species. Subtle changes to perception and decision-making, promoting certain ideological frameworks over others. Mind control after all, Ben observed grimly. More insidious, Elena clarified. It doesn't force specific thoughts or actions, it alters how individuals perceive threats and opportunities. Makes certain choices seem more logical or necessary than others. Like seeing genetic manipulation of civilian populations as a reasonable security measure, Hope noted. Ben moved closer to the central hub, drawn by the Chaquetrix's increasingly intense response to the ancient technology. As he approached, the system seemed to recognize his presence, energy patterns shifting to focus on him, or more specifically, on the device within his transformed state. It knows what the Chaquetrix is, he stated, sensing the exchange of information occurring beyond his conscious perception. She recognizes it as part of the original network. Ben, be careful, Hope cautioned, magical energy gathering around her hands in preparation for whatever might occur. We don't know how these systems will interact. Before Ben could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the chamber. Elena pulled back from the interface, nanites reforming around her hands in defensive configuration. Security protocols activated, she reported tersely. Something in the system recognized unauthorized access. Or it recognized the Chaquetrix as a threat to its operation, Hope suggested, quickly reinforcing their protective barrier as energy patterns throughout the chamber intensified. Ben made a split-second decision. We need to download whatever information we can and get out. Elena, can your nanites copy the system's database? Parts of it, she confirmed, already directing the microscopic machines to begin the process. But there's too much data to capture everything in the time we have. Focus on the project parameters and implementation plans, Ben instructed. Anything that tells us when and where they intend to deploy this technology on a larger scale. As Elena worked, Ben turned to Hope. Can you contain any pursuit long enough for us to escape back the way we came? The sorceress nodded, magical energy now flowing in complex patterns around her. I can create a tempo-dimensional barrier, not as stable as Gwen's pocket dimension, but enough to slow them down. The chamber's doors slid open, security personnel pouring in with weapons drawn. Unlike standard plumber agents, these individuals wore specialized armor that seemed to incorporate elements of the ancient technology, energy patterns flowing through the material in a manner similar to the chamber walls. Intruder alert in the Nexus chamber, announced one of the lead agents. All personnel, containment protocols in effect. Ben moved to intercept, positioning himself between the security team and his companions. Keep working, he instructed Elena. I'll handle this. The Chaquetrix pulsed within his transformed state, suggesting a different approach than direct confrontation. Following its guidance, Ben reverted to human form momentarily before initiating a new transformation. The device responded instantly, energy washing over him in patterns unlike any previous transformation. Where Ben had stood, a new form emerged, one that combined elements of multiple alien species in a single cohesive entity. The primary structure resembled Diamond Head's crystalline form, but with heat blasts. Energy flowing through fissures in the surface. Forearms musculature provided enhanced strength, while XLR8's sensory capabilities and reflexes completed the hybrid transformation. What the hell? One of the security agents exclaimed, weapon wavering slightly at the unexpected sight. Ben himself momentarily paused in surprise, adjusting to the sensation of multiple alien physiologies functio ning in harmony rather than the chaotic shifting he had experienced during the Omnitrix's malfunction. This was something new, controlled fusion of alien DNA, allowing complementary abilities to function simultaneously. Fusion transformation, he murmured, understanding flowing from the Chaquetrix. Evolutionary adaptation to complex threats. The security team recovered quickly, weapons charging. With energy derived from the ancient technology. Take it down, the leader ordered. Non-lethal measures only. The Chimera director wants the device intact. The first blast struck Ben's crystalline exterior, energy dispersing across the surface before being absorbed into the fiery core of his hybrid form. Rather than causing damage, the attack seemed to fuel his energy levels, the heat blast component converting it to usable power. That's new, Ben observed, before launching a counterattack. The fusion form moved with XLR8's speed while delivering strikes with forearms strength, enhanced further by Diamond Head's crystalline projections and Heat Blast's energy manipulation. The combination proved devastatingly effective against the armored security team, who clearly hadn't anticipated such an integrated set of capabilities. Hope joined the battle, her magic creating distortions in space that redirected enemy fire and disrupted their coordination. The specialized armor appeared to offer some resistance to her spells, confirming their suspicion that the ancient technology had been specifically designed to counter energy-based abilities. Almost done, Elena called from the central hub. Nanites working at maximum capacity to extract crucial data. 30 more seconds. The security team called for reinforcements, their communications indicating a facility-wide response mobilizing. Ben intensified his efforts, using the fusion form's combined abilities to create barriers of crystalline material superheated to near melting point, effectively cutting off portions of the chamber from easy access. Time to go, Elena announced, nanites returning to her body with their stored data. I've got what we need. Hope had already begun creating their escape route, Magical RGY tearing a temporary passage through space that would connect to their entry point. This won't hold long, she warned. The technology here actively resists dimensional manipulation. Ben nodded, continuing to hold off the security team as his companions prepared to retreat. The fusion form was proving remarkably stable, with no signs of the strain or time limitations that typically affected his transformations. The Chaquetrix seemed to have overcome many of the Omnitrix's original constraints. As the last of the security team fell back to regroup, Ben joined Hope and Elena at the dimensional passage. Go, he instructed. I'll be right behind you. Elena disappeared through the shimmering portal first, followed by Hope, who maintained the passage from the other side through sheer force of will. Ben prepared to follow, but paused as the Chaquetrix pulsed with urgent communication, a final task before departure. Following the device's guidance, he approached the central hub once more. The fusion form's crystalline component extended, creating a direct physical connectetrix in the ancient system. Information flowed between them in a rapid exchange that lasted only seconds but conveyed volumes of data. When the connection broke, Ben sensed that something fundamental had changed within the facility's system, as if the Chaquetrix had implanted something in its operational matrix. There was no time to analyze the implications as reinforcements began pouring into the chamber from multiple entrances. Ben leapt through the dimensional passage just as it began to collapse, Pei's magic barely maintaining stability long enough for his transit. They emerged in the maintenance shaft, alarms blaring throughout the facility as security protocols activated at every level. Move, Ben urged, leading them upward toward their extraction point. The fusion form navigated the narrow passage with surprising agility, adapting to the confined space despite its enhanced musculature. They reached the maintenance building to find it swarming with security personnel. Without hesitation, Hope cast a disorientation spell that confused their perceptions long enough for the group to slip past and into the surrounding darkness. Elena's nanites disrupted surveillance systems as they moved, creating blind spots in the facility's monitoring network. The perimeter fence posed a greater challenge than during their entry, now electrified and patrolled by security drones. Ben's fusion form provided the solution, crystalline structures creating a safe passage while energy manipulation neutralized the electrical current temporarily. Once beyond the immediate facility grounds, they raced toward Gwen's extraction point, security forces in close pursuit. The mountainside echoed with the sound of vehicles and aircraft mobilizing for a wider search pattern, the plumbers clearly committing significant resources to their capture. The extraction point came into view, a shimmering distortion in space barely visible among the trees. Gwen stood at its center, magical energy flowing around her as she maintained the connection to their pocket dimension. Hurry, she called, sensing their approach. The anchor is destabilizing faster than expected. Elena reached the portal first, diving through without hesitation. Hope followed, her magic combining with Gwen's to reinforce the rapidly deteriorating connection. Ben brought up the rear, the fusion form's enhanced senses detecting pursuit closing in from multiple directions. As he reached the portal, the Chaquetrix pulsed with one final communication, a warning of imminent counterattack. Ben turned to see a figure emerging from the tree line, a weapon unlike any standard plumber issue raised and aimed directly at him. Magus. Chair Hulka stood in silhouette against the searchlights of approaching vehicles, his expression grim and determined. "It doesn't have to end this way, Tennyson," he called. "The Chimera process could be the salvation of humanity. Not if it costs us our humanity in the process," Ben countered, the fusion form's voice carrying the resonance of multiple alien species in harmony. Hulka's weapon charged, energy gathering at its barrel. "The process has already begun. You can't stop evolution." "Not stopping it," Ben replied as he backed toward the portal. "Just making sure it follows the right path." The weapon fired just as Ben leapt through the dimensional doorway, the energy blast distorting as it struck the collapsing portal. The last thing Ben saw before the connection sealed was Hulk A's expression of frustrated rage, and something else, something not quite human in the Magister's eyes. Then they were through, the pocket dimension reforming around them as Gwen collapsed the portal completely. The abrupt transition from battle to safety left them momentarily disoriented, adrenaline still coursing through their systems. "Everyone okay?" Gwen asked, surveying the group with concern. Elena nodded, though her nanites showed signs of strain from their intensive data extraction. Hope likewise appeared fatigued, the extended use of her magic in hostile conditions having taken a toll. Ben, however, remained in the fusion form, seemingly unaffected by the exertion of the mission. "Ben," Gwen prompted, studying his transformed state with fascination. "New form." The Chaquetrix pulsed once more, and Ben reverted to human form in a wash of emerald energy. Unlike previous transformations, the process occurred smoothly, without the usual disorientation of transitioning between alien physiologies. "Not exactly new," he explained, examining the Chaquetrix as its interface displayed information about the fusion capability. "More like a combination of existing ones. The Chaquetrix can merge compatible alien DNA sequences into hybrid forms." "Efficient," Hope noted, recovering her composure. "And tactically advantageous." "Did you get what we needed?" Gwen asked, turning to Elena. The nanite controller nodded, directing her microscopic machines to project the extracted data onto the central console. "Everything about Project Chimera's implementation timeline, target populations, and underlying technology." As the information appeared in holographic form, the scope of the threat became clear. The plumbers had adapted the ancient evolutionary network into a global system designed to fundamentally alter human DNA across entire populations. Initial deployment was scheduled for major population centers within 3 months, disguised as a vaccination program against a manufactured pathogen. 3 months, Ben murmured, scanning through the implementation details. "That's how long we have to stop this. And we're not just talking about Earth," Gwen added, highlighting sections of the data that detailed extraterrestrial applications. "They're planning to extend this to other species as well, creating a hierarchy of evolution with their enhanced humans at the top. Just as the corrupted network was designed to do millennia ago," Hope observed. "History repeating itself on a galactic scale." Elena focused on technical specifications, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "The integration of nanite technology is particularly concerning. They've adapted principles similar to what infected my father and me, but with greater control over the resulting transformations. Which explains why they were so interested in you as a test subject," Ben noted. "Your successful integration with the nanites provided a template for their own work." As they continued analyzing the data, Ben felt the Chaquetrix pulse gently against his wrist. Unlike the urgent communications during their mission, this carried a sense of satisfaction, as if a long-dormant purpose had been reawakened. "There's something else," he said, drawing their attention. "When we were escaping, the Chaquetrix connected directly with the facility's central hub. It transmitted something into their system." "Transmitted what, exactly?" Gwen asked, concern evident in her tone. "I'm not entirely sure," Ben admitted. "But based on what I'm sensing from it now, I think it implanted a countermeasure, something designed to undermine the corrupted programming." A virus, Elena suggested. More like a restoration of original parameters, Ben clarified, understanding flow. Ing from his deepening connection with the device. The Chaquetrix was preserved because it maintained the uncorrupted version of the evolutionary guidance protocols. It recognized the facility's SIST M as part of its original network and attempted to correct the corruption. Will it work? Hope questioned. I don't know, Ben replied honestly. But it's a start. At minimum, it should create instabilities in their system that might delay implementation, buying us time to formulate a more comprehensive response, Gwen concluded. As the implications of their discovery settled over the group, Ben realized they had crossed a threshold. What had begun as an escape from personal betrayal had evolved into something far larger, a confrontation with forces that had shaped galactic history for millennia. The Chaquetrix pulsed again, a small hologram above its surface, the symbol Ben had seen in his dreams, representing the original purpose of the evolutionary network. The flourishing, they had called it, guidance toward balance rather than dominance, cooperation rather than conquest. We've taken the first step, Ben stated, looking at each of his companions in turn. But stopping Project ECT Chimera will require more than just the four of us. We need allies who understand what we're facing and have the resources to help us counter it. I might know someone, Elena offered after a moment's consideration. A former plumber scientist who left the organization years ago when he saw the direction their research was taking. Dr. Xylene, he was my father's mentor before everything changed. And I can reach out to certain magical communities, Hope added. Many have sensed the dimensional disturbances caused by this technology. They would have a vested interest in helping us. Gwen nodded. I still have contacts in the academic community studying extraterrestrial biology. They could help us develop countermeasures to the genetic manipulation process. Ben looked down at the Chaquetrix, its surface now calm but still radiating a sense of purpose that aligned with his own. Then we have work to do. The plumbers wanted to control evolution, to direct it toward their vision of the future. Instead, he continued with quiet determination, we'll ensure it follows its true path. Not domination, but adaptation. Not control, but balance. The symbol of the flourishing continued to rotate above the Chaquetrix, a silent reminder of what had been lost, and what might yet be restored. The dark evolution had begun. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Shadows and Allies. The forgotten, alien outpost sprawled beneath a mile of solid bedrock, hidden from both terrestrial detection systems and orbital scans. Once a Galvan monitoring station abandoned centuries ago, its existence had been purged from official records when newer facilities rendered it obsolete. Ben had discovered it during his early days with the Omnitrix, a teenage adventure forgotten by most but carefully catalogued in his memory as a potential sanctuary. Now that sanctuary had become their base of operations. The main chamber hummed with activity as Ben and his growing team converted the ancient facility into a functional headquarters. Crystalline lighting fixtures cast the space in a cool blue glow, illuminating workstations where salvaged and repurposed technology formed a patchwork command center. The aesthetics might have been chaotic, but the functionality was undeniable. Power distribution is finally stabilized, Elena announced from a console where her nanites interfaced directly with the outpost systems. Blue light pulsed beneath her skin as the microscopic machines translated alien technology into understandable parameters. We've got about 80% of the original capacity online, which should be more than sufficient for our needs. The dimensional anchors are holding as well, Hope added, examining mystical sigils she had inscribed at strategic points throughout the facility. Silver-white hair pulled back in a practical braid, she moved with the confident precision of someone accustomed to working in hostile environments. Anyone attempting to breach this location through conventional or magical means will find themselves redirected to rather unpleasant alternatives. Ben nodded approvingly, surveying their progress. 1 week had passed since their infiltration of the New Mexico facility, a week of constant movement, resource gathering, and preparation. The plumbers had intensified their search efforts, deploying specialized teams across the globe with techno OGY specifically designed to detect the Chaquetrix's energy signature. Any word from Gwen? He asked, checking the secure communication system they had established. Nothing yet, Elena replied, though she didn't appear concerned. But she's only been gone 3 days. Infiltrating plumber intelligence networks takes time, even with her abilities. Ben tried to ignore the worry that nagged at him. Sending Gwen alone to gather intelligence from compromised plumber archives had been a calculated risk. Her magical abilities provided protection that technology alone couldn't match, and her arcade Mike credentials gave her plausible reasons to access certain research facilities. Still, with the organization's resources now fully dedicated to hunting them, every mission carried significant danger. The Chaquetrix pulsed gently against his wrist, almost as if sensing his concern. In the days since their discovery at the New Mexico facility, Ben's connection with the device had deepened considerably. The dreams, or memories, continued, revealing more about the ancient civilization that had created it and their vision for guided evolution. "You're projecting again," Hope observed, not looking up from her work but clearly aware of the subtle energy emanating from the device. "Your thoughts are affecting the Chaquetrix's energy patterns." Ben glanced down to find tendrils of emerald light extending from the device, forming complex patterns in the air before dissipating. "Still getting used to the feedback loop," he admitted. "The connection works both ways now. My emotions influence its behavior, and its memories affect mine." Quote, "Dangerous," Hope noted, though without judgment. "Especially if those memories carry the biases of previous bearers." "It's more than memories," Ben explained, struggling to articulate what he experienced. "It's almost like accessing a different perspective, seeing evolution and life itself through the lens of beings who understood it differently than we do." Elena looked up from her console, curiosity evident in her expression. "Different how?" Ben considered the question carefully. They saw life as fundamentally interconnected, all species part of a greater whole, each with a role in maintaining balance. Not the survival of the fittest, but the thriving of the complementary. The flourishing, Hope recalled the term from their previous discussions. Exactly. They didn't see evolution as competition, stronger species dominating weaker ones. They saw it as adaptation toward greater harmony. Ben shook his head slightly. "Which makes the eruption of their network all the more tragic. It perverted their entire philosophy. And now the plumbers are perpetuating that perversion without even understanding it," Elena added grimly. Our conversation was interrupted by an alert from the security system, not an intrusion, but notification of an incoming transmission through their secure channel. Ben moved quickly to the communication console, hoping to see Gwen's signature in the encryption pattern. Instead, the system displayed a different identifier, one they had been expecting but hadn't received until now. "It's Drive Xylene," Elena confirmed, checking the authentication protocols. "Looks like he received my message and is responding through the secure relay I established." Ben nodded. "Put him through." The central display flickered before resolving into the image of an elderly man with sharp features and alert eyes that belied his apparent age. Dr. Janice Xylene had been one of the plumber's most brilliant researchers before his abrupt retirement 5 years earlier, officially for health reasons, though rumors of ideological disagreements had circulated among those who knew him. "Elena Validus," he greeted, his verses OICE carrying the precise diction of a lifelong academic. "When I received your message, I wondered if it might be a trap. The encryption sequence you used was one I developed with your father for private communications only." "It's really me, Doctor," Elena replied, moving into view of the transmission. "And the situation is exactly as I described." Xylene's gaze shifted to Ben, recognition and curiosity flickering across his features. "Benjamin Tennyson, your recent change in status has caused quite the uproar in certain circles. The official narrative paints you as a through those who knew. You find such claims difficult to reconcile with your history of service." "The plumbers aren't what they used to be," Ben stated simply. "Neither am I, for that matter." "Indeed." Xylene's gaze fixed on the Chaquetrix, clearly visible on Ben's wrist. "That device, it's evolved beyond its original parameters." "Fascinating. You recognize what it's become?" Ben asked, surprised. "Not specifically, no, but I've studied enough alien technology to recognize paradigm shifts when I see them." Xylene leaned closer to his camera. "Your message mentioned Project Chimera. I assume you've discovered the full scope of the initiative." Elena nodded. "We infiltrated the primary research facility in New Mexico, downloaded substantial data on their implementation plans and underlying technology. Then you know we have precious little time, Xylene stated gravely. The project's first large-scale deployment is scheduled within months. 3 months, according to the data we recovered, Ben confirmed. Though we may have bought some additional time, the Chaquetrix transmitted something into their central systems during our infiltration, some kind of countermeasure against the corrupted programming. This information clearly surprised Xylene. A direct interface with their network. That's unexpected and potentially significant. He appeared to consider something before continuing. I have continued my research independently since leaving the plumbers. Recent findings suggest the Chimera technology derives from an ancient source, something far beyond even Galvan understanding. We know, Hope interjected. Stepping into view, the creators of the Chaquetrix, an ancient species dedicated to guiding evolution toward balance rather than dominance. Xylene studied Hope with evident curiosity. You must be the sorceress Elena mentioned. Your understanding of dimensional energies could prove invaluable in countering Chimera's effects. That's why we contacted you, Ben explained. We need to understand exactly how the plumbers adapted this ancient technology and where they're vulnerable. Your expertise with their research protocols could help us develop effective countermeasures. The scientist's expression became grave. What you're proposing is nothing less than direct opposition to the most powerful organization in the galaxy. Even with the information and abilities you possess, the odds are unfavorable. We've faced worse odds before, Ben stated with quiet confidence. Perhaps, Xylene acknowledged, but rarely against an enemy so thoroughly embedded in the systems meant to protect us. He sighed, a decision visibly forming. I cannot join you directly. My movements are monitored, despite my retirement. However, I can provide research and analysis remotely. And perhaps more importantly, I can connect you with others who share our concerns. Others? Elena questioned. Former colleagues, independent researchers, even current plumbers who harbor doubts about the organization's direction. A loose network of individuals who have noticed the changes but lack the context to understand them. Xylene's expression hardened with resolve. Your discovery provides that context. With proper coordination, isolated concerns might become organized resistance. Ben exchanged glances with Hope and Elena, silent communication passing between them. Or allies would certainly improve their chances, but expanded communication also increased security risks. We'll need to establish additional protocols for any new contacts, Ben decided. Compartmentalized information, verification procedures. Of course, Xylene agreed. I've maintained operational security habits since my plumber days. Nothing has left my secure systems regarding your contact. He glanced off camera briefly. I should go. Extended secure transmissions might draw attention. I'll compile relevant research data and forward it through Elena's encryption channel. Thank you, Doctor, Elena said sincerely. Don't thank me yet, Xylene replied with grim humor. If we fail, we'll all share the same fate, subjects in the greatest forced evolution experiment in galactic history. The transmission ended, leaving the three of them in contemplative silence. The scope of their challenge grew clearer with each new piece of information, not just a rogue faction within the plumbers, but a fundamental shift in the organization's purpose and methodology. He's right about the odds, Hope noted pragmatically. Since when do odds matter? Ben countered. Half my career has been beating impossible odds. Elena smiled slightly. True, though usually with more backup than we currently have. Working on that, Ben replied, turning his attention back to the facility systems. In the meantime, let's focus on what we can control. How's the defense grid coming along? Before Elena could respond, the security system chimed again, this time with the distinct pattern that indicated Gwen's return. Ben felt immediate relief, moving quickly toward the transport chamber where the dimensional portal would manifest. The air shimmered as reality folded inward, creating an opening through which Gwen stepped. She appeared tired but unharmed, carrying a data storage device and accompanied by a figure Ben hadn't expected to see. Kai, he blurted in surprise. Kai Green had changed significantly since their last encounter years ago. The museum curator's daughter had grown into a composed, confident woman with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style, and she wore field gear suited for archaeological expeditions rather than urban environments. Tennyson, she greeted with a slight nod. Looks like trouble still follows you everywhere. Or I follow it. Ben replied automatically, before turning a questioning gaze to Gwen. Not that I'm not happy to see you, but we ran into each other at the Plumber Archive in London, Gwen explained. Setting down her equipment. Or rather, she caught me accessing restricted materials about Project Chimera. Turns out Kai has been conducting her own investigation into Unasu. Archaeological findings related to ancient genetic manipulation technology. The same technology the plumbers are now using, Kai added, surveying the alien outpost with professional interest. They spent the last 3 years tracking distinctive artifacts across multiple dig sites. Artifacts that disappear shortly after plumber security teams visit the excavations. Hope and Elena had joined them. Regarding the newcomer with cautious assessment. Introductions were made quickly, professional respect gradually replacing initial wariness. Kai is an expert in pre-human civilizations on Earth, Gwen explained. Including evidence of ancient alien visitation and technology transfer. My specialty is comparative evolutionary patterns, Kai elaborated. How contact with advanced species affected human development throughout history. Her gaze fixed on the Chaquetrix with evident fascination. Including devices like that one. Ben glanced down at his wrist. You recognize it? Not specifically, Kai admitted. But I've documented similar design elements in artifacts dating back nearly 15,000 years. Distinctive patterns that appear across cultures that had no contact with each other, suggesting a common extraterrestrial source. The original creators, Hope surmised. Their influence extended to Earth as well. Multiple worlds, Kai corrected. I've found references in ancient texts describing similar artifacts on at least 7 different planets. Always associated with periods of unusual evolutionary advancement. The implications settled over the group as they moved to the main chamber. Gwen transferred the data she had gathered to their central system, while Kai examined the facility with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to evaluating ancient technology. This outpost is Galvan design, early 9th periodic era, she noted, inspecting the architectural elements. Interest environmental systems to accommodate diverse species. You can identify Galvan architectural periods? Elena asked, impressed despite herself. When you've excavated enough ruins, you start recognizing distinctive patterns, Kai replied with a casual shrug that belied the expertise involved. Different species leave different technological fingerprints. This facility is actually quite young by archaeological standards, perhaps 3,000 Earth years. The others continued setting up equipment. Ben approached Gwen privately. Are you sure about bringing her in? He asked quietly. Our history is complicated. Gwen gave him a knowing look. Which part? The professional rivalry when she dismissed your theories about the Aztec artifacts, or the fact that you had an enormous crush on her when we were kids? Both, Ben admitted. Plus the whole, I thought you were immature and reckless assessment she made during our last collaboration. She's changed, Gwen replied. We all have, and her expertise is exactly what we need right now. Plumbers are finding these ancient artifacts and adapting the technology without understanding its cultural context or original purpose. Kai might help us fill those gaps. Ben nodded reluctantly. It's not that I don't trust your judgment. It's just complicated, Gwen finished for him. I know, but this is bigger than old history, Ben. And from what I can tell, her opinions about you have evolved considerably since she saw the work you've been doing with the plumbers. A slight smile touched her lips. Before everything went sideways, anyway. Their conversation was interrupted as Ina called everyone to the central console, where the data from both Gwen's infiltration and Kai's research was being integrated into their existing information about Project Chimera. The picture is becoming clearer, Elena announced. Nanites creating a 3-dimensional display above the console. The plumbers discovered the first components of the ancient network approximately 5 years ago. During what was officially classified as a routine archaeological assessment of an uncharted system. Navita's system, outer rim of the Andromeda Galaxy, Kai added, pulling up her own records. Racked unusual artifact requisitions through the Museum of Cosmic Heritage where I consult. Multiple shipments of unclassified technology transferred to plumber research facilities under special authorization. The initial discovery was accidental, Gwen continued, highlighting relevant sections of the data she had acquired. A survey team investigating potential colonization sites discovered ruins containing active technology. Standard protocol would have involved careful documentation and preservation, but within days, the entire operation was classified and transferred to a special division under direct Magister oversight. Magister Hulka, Ben noted, recognizing the authorization codes. Among others, Gwen confirmed, including some names I didn't expect to see involved in something like this. She highlighted several profiles, respected plumber officials with long-standing reputations for ethical conduct. Whatever influence this technology exerts, it appears to affect even those with strong moral foundations. The corruption is subtle but pervasive, Hope observed, studying the data with narrowed eyes. Similar to certain forms of magical influence that reshape percepti. On gradually rather than forcing immediate compliance. Elena directed her nanites to display the timeline they had reconstructed. According to these records, the first successful interface with the ancient technology occurred approximately 4 years ago. Shortly after, the first genetic experiments began, classified as evolutionary medicine research. And 3 years ago, Project Chimera was officially established, Gwen added. Though not in any public records. Even most plumbers believe it's simply an advanced medical research initiative. The perfect cover, Ben noted grimly. Who would question developing better treatments for injured agents or alien refugees? Kai had been studying the genetic data with particular interest. These modification patterns are remarkably similar to evolutionary jumps I've documented in ancient human remains found near suspected alien contact sites. Accelerated development of specific traits, enhanced strength, sensory perception, neural capacity. Guided evolution, Hope translated, just as the Chaquetrix was designed to facilitate. But corrupted toward dominance rather than balance, Ben added, the device on his wrist pulsing in apparent agreement. As they continued analyzing the combined data, a disturbing pattern emerged. The plumbers had systematically located and collected artifacts related to the ancient evolutionary network from multiple worlds, not just Earth. Each discovery accelerated their research and expanded Project Chimera's capabilities. They're rebuilding the original network piece by piece, Elena realized, horror dawning in her expression. Not just adapting the technology, recreating the entire system that was dismantled millennia ago. With the same corruption that caused its original failure, Ben added. Memories from the Chaquetrix providing context the others lacked. A system designed to guide species toward greater harmony, perverted to create hierarchies of dominance instead. And Nitty would be positioned at the top of that hierarchy, Gwen concluded. Or at least, whoever controls the network would control evolutionary destiny for countless species. Kai shook her head, profe. Chanel outrage evident in her expression. They're tampering with forces they barely understand. Even with advanced technology, directed evolution on this scale has unpredictable consequences. Biolog. ICAL systems resist artificial constraints. They find ways to express complexity regardless of imposed limitations. Which might explain why their test subjects show such high failure rates, Elena noted grimly. The modifications aren't failing because the technology is flawed, but because life itself resists such fundamental manipulation. The implications settled heavily over the group. What had begun as an investigation into corruption within the plumbers had expanded into something far more significant, a threat to the natural evolutionary path of countless species across multiple worlds. We need to expand our approach, Ben decided after a thoughtful pause. Originally, we were focused on exposing Project Chimera and stopping its implementation on Earth. But now we're looking at a galactic-scale threat with historical precedent. We still need to prioritize the immediate Earth deployment, Gwen cautioned. According to the timeline, that's their first large-scale test case. If we can disrupt it successfully, we gain time to address the broader network. Agreed, Ben nodded. But we also need to understand exactly how they're rebuilding this network and where its vulnerabilities lie. He turned to Kai. Your archaeological expertise could help us identify other artifacts they might be seeking, pieces of the network not yet incorporated into their system. Kai considered this, then nodded. I can cross-reference my documentation with their acquisition records. Might reveal patterns or locations they haven't yet exploited. Meanwhile, we should focus on developing In countermeasures for the genetic modifications themselves, Elena suggested. My nanites have been analyzing the chimera formulations. With sufficient understanding, we might be able to create a neutralizing agent, something that could reverse the changes in subjects already affected. Hope, who had been unusually quiet during this exchange, finally spoke. There's another aspect we should consider. The dimensional disturbances we detected aren't just side effects, they're intentional connections to other realms. All eyes turned to her, prompting elaboration. The original network operated across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, she explained. The artifacts just scattered across planets, they exist in parallel across realities. The plumbers may not even realize that by activating these components, they're establishing connections to other dimensions, which could explain the energy pattern similarities between their technology and the disturbances we tracked last month, Gwen noted, connecting the pieces. Exactly, Hope confirmed. They're inadvertently creating weak points in the dimensional barriers, points that could potentially be exploited by entities from other realms. Just keeps getting better, Ben muttered, rubbing his temples. The Chaquetrix pulsed against his wrist, projecting faint symbols that corresponded with Hope's assessment. The device agrees with you. Its memories include safeguards specifically designed to prevent dimensional breaches during network operation. Safeguards the plumbers almost certainly don't understand or haven't implemented, Hope concluded. The conversation continued well into the night, each team member contributing their expertise to a gradually expanding understanding of the threat they faced. Kai's archaeological knowledge provided historical context, Elena's technical skills offered potential countermeasures, Hope's magical perspective revealed dimensional implications, and Gwen's intelligence filled crucial gaps in their knowledge of current plumber operations. Ben found himself in the unique position of integrating these diverse perspectives, his connection with the Chaquetrix providing insights that bridged scientific, historical, and magical understandings of the ancient network. The leadership role felt both familiar and new, similar to his years commanding plumber teams, yet fundamentally different in the collaborative approach required by their current circumstances. As the others eventually retired to rest, Ben remained at the central console, reviewing the accumulated data one final time. The Chaquetrix pulsed gently against his wrist, its energy patterns suggesting it had more to share. Might as well get comfortable, he murmured to the device. I have a feelin', gee, this is going to be another enlightening night. Closing his eyes, Ben allowed the Chaquetrix to guide his consciousness into the now familiar meditative state where communication transcended language. Images formed behind his closed eyelids, memories not his own, yet increasingly accessible through his deepening connection with the device. This time, the memories focused on the network's operational parameters, how the original system had guided evolution through subtle influences rather than direct manipulation. Unlike Project Chimera's aggressive genetic restructuring, the ancient approach had involved creating environmental conditions that encouraged natural adaptation along beneficial paths. The distinction was crucial: cooperation with natural processes rather than domination over them. Enhancement rather than replacement. The flourishing had been designed to work with evolution's inherent tendencies, not override them with artificial constraints. As the memories continued flowing, Ben sensed a presence behind him, someone observing his meditation without interrupting. Opening his eyes, he found Hope standing a short distance away, silver-white hair gleaming in the dim light of the chamber. Sorry, she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't particularly apologetic. The energy patterns were visible from halfway across the facility. Caught my attention. Ben straightened, rolling his shoulders to release the tension of extended stillness. How long was I out? About 3 hours, Hope replied, moving closer to examine the faint symbols still projecting from the Chaquetrix. Your connection with the device is deepening more rapidly than expected. Is that concern I hear in your voice? Ben asked with mild amusement. Hope's expression remained serious. Prudent caution. Ancient consciousnesses rarely integrate with modern minds without complications. It's not exactly a consciousness, Ben clarified, though with less certainty than he would have liked. More like accumulated experiences and knowledge, preserved within the device's matrix. A distinction without much practical difference, Hope countered. Whether you call it consciousness, memory, or programming, it's influencing your perspective, reshaping how you understand the universe. Ben couldn't deny the truth in her assessment. Each session with the Chaquetrix left him viewing reality through an increasingly complex lens, seeing connections and patterns that would have been invisible to him before. Is that necessarily a bad thing? He asked. The original creators had insights into evolution that we're only beginning to grasp scientifically. Their perspective might be exactly what we need to counter the corruption. Hope studied him thoughtfully before responding. Not inherently bad, no. But transformation is rarely without cost. The question is whether you're conscious of how you're changing, and whether you're directing that change or merely subjected to it. The conversation echoed concerns Ben had harbored privately, questions about the extent to which the Chaquetrix was guiding him versus being guided by him. The symbiosis they were developing existed in a gray area between partnership and fusion. I could use some help with that, actually, he admitted after a moment's consideration. Your experience with magical consciousnesses and external influences might be valuable in maintaining balance. Surprise flickered briefly across Hope's features, perhaps at his willingness to acknowledge potential vulnerability. What did you have in mind? Training, Ben replied. You've been teaching me meditation techniques for accessing the Chaquetrix's knowledge. Could you also teach methods for maintaining separation when necessary? Boundaries between its influence and my own consciousness. Hope considered the request, then nodded slowly. There are magical disciplines designed specifically for that purpose. Practitioners who work with powerful artifacts or entities develop techniques to preserve their identity while accessing external power. A hint of wry humor touched her expression. I've had considerable personal experience in that area, as you might recall. The reference to her past struggles with magical entities hung between them, a history neither had directly addressed since forming their unlikely alliance. Ben recognized the significance of her willingness to revisit those experiences, even obliquely. Thank you, he said simply. Don't thank me yet, Hope replied, the familiar edge returning to her voice. The training isn't pleasant. Establishing mental boundaries requires confronting exactly what you fear losing to external influence. When do we start? No time like the present, she answered, gesturing toward an empty space suitable for practice. Unless you'd prefer sleep after 3 hours of alien memory absorption. Ben smiled slightly. Sleep is overrated. The training session that followed proved as challenging as Hope had warned. Rather than the relatively straightforward meditation techniques she had taught previously, these exercises involved deliberately exposing his mind to the Chaquetrix's influence while simultaneously maintaining awareness of the boundaries between them. Visualize yourself as distinct but connected, Hope instructed, her voice taking on the measured cadence of an experienced teacher. Like a planet in orbit around a star, influenced by its gravity, illuminated by its light, but maintaining your own existence separate from it. Ben struggled with the concept initially. The Chaquetrix's presence so thoroughly integrated with his consciousness that separation felt almost arbitrary. Each time he attempted to establish a boundary, memories and knowledge the device flowed across it effortlessly. You're trying too hard to create a wall, Hope observed after several failed attempts. Boundaries aren't always barriers. Sometimes they're interfaces, points of controlled extraction. The distinction proved crucial. Ben shifted his approach, visualizing not a wall between himself and the Chaquetrix, but a permeable membrane, allowing controlled flow. While maintaining distinct identity on either side. Gradually, a new equilibrium emerged. The Chaquetrix's knowledge remained accessible, but Ben could now distinguish more clearly between his own thoughts and those influenced by the device. The separation wasn't complete. Perhaps couldn't be, given the nature of their connection, but it provided a framework for maintaining his identity while accessing ancient wisdom. Better, Hope acknowledged as she observed the stabilizing energy patterns around him. Though this is just the beginning. Maintaining these boundaries under stress or in combat will be considerably more challenging. Quote, one step at a time, Ben replied, the effort of maintaining the new mental configuration evident in his voice. Hope studied him with an unreadable expression before adding, for what it's worth. You're adapting to this faster than most would. Whatever else the Omnitrix did to you over the years, it apparently prepared your mind for this kind of integration. Coming from Hope, the observation constituted high praise indeed. Their session continued for another hour before physical fatigue began affecting Ben's concentration. Even with his enhanced stamina, a side effect of years bonded to the Omnitrix and now the Chaquetrix. Mental exertion eventually took its toll. Enough for tonight, Hope decided, noting his flagging focus. Rest is necessary for integration. The mind processes complex experiences during sleep. Ben nodded gratefully, the new mental boundaries requiring conscious maintenance that had become increasingly difficult as exhaustion set in. Same time tomorrow, if circumstances permit, Hope replied pragmatically. Though given our situation, regular schedules seem optimistic. As if summoned by her words, the facility's alert system activated. Not the high-priority alarm indicating immediate danger, but the notification pattern for incoming data through their secure channels. Ben moved quickly to the central console, Hope following close behind. The system displayed an automated message from Dr. Xylene's secure server, a data package transmitted according to their predetermined protocol. As Elena had predicted, the scientist was providing information remotely rather than risking direct communication. Should we wake the others? Hope asked, noting the timestamp indicated the transmission had arrived only minutes earlier. Ben considered briefly, then shook his head. Let's see what we're dealing with first. They need rest while they can get it. The data package contained several components, research notes, technical specifications, and most significantly, intelligence regarding plumber movements related to Project Chimera. This last element caught Ben's immediate attention. They're accelerating the timeline, he noted with concern. Scanning through the information, the first deployment phase has been moved up by 3 weeks. Why the sudden urgency? Hope questioned, reading over his shoulder. According to Xylene's sources, they experienced a system anomaly at the New Mexico facility shortly after our infiltration. Exactly what the Chaquetrix transmitted into their network. Ben continued reviewing the data. They haven't identified the cause, but they're concerned about potential degradation of the central hub. They want to implement the first phase before any further complications arise. Rushing a process this complex increases the risk of failure, Hope observed. Or unforeseen consequences, Ben agreed. But it also means we have less time to develop countermeasures. The technical specifications portion of the data package provided detailed information about the deployment mechanism, a modified atmospheric dispersal system designed to release the genetic modification agent across targeted population centers. The agent itself used nanite technology similar to what had infected Elena, but engineered specifically for controlled genetic restructuring rather than complete conversion. This is sophisticated work, Ben noted, his years of experience with alien technology allowing him to appreciate the complexity involved. Combining elements from multiple species into a coherent system. And yet fundamentally flawed in its approach, Hope countered. Forcing evolution rather than guiding it naturally. The original creators would consider this a perversion of their work. The Chaquetrix pulsed in apparent agreement, projecting symbols that corresponded to warnings about forced evolutionary acceleration. Ben translated the concept through his newly established mental interface. The device is indicating that rapid genetic modification destabilizes not just physical structures but consciousness itself, he explained. The mind needs time to integrate changes to the body, especially changes as fundamental as what Project Chimera proposes. Which explains the psychological instability observed in test subjects, Hope concluded. Their conscio. USNESS cannot reconcile the sudden transformation. The final component of Xylene's transmission contained perhaps the most immediately concerning information. Deployment teams had already been dispatched to 16 major cities worldwide, establishing the infrastructure necessary for the first phase of implementation. We need to wake the others, Ben decided, the urgency of the situation now clear. Xylene's information changes our timeline significantly. Within minutes, the entire team had gathered at the central console, varying degrees of sleep deprivation evident in their expressions as they absorbed the new information. Elena interfaced directly with the technical specifications, her nanites analyzing the deployment system for potential vulnerabilities. The atmospheric dispersal mechanism has significant similarities to technology my father was researching before his disappearance, she noted, concern evident in her voice. He was developing environmental remediation systems using nanite technology, designed to remove pollutants from the air and water. The plumbers co-opted his research, Gwen surmised, anger flashing in her eyes. And perverted its purpose, Elena confirmed bitterly. systems designed to purify the environment repurposed to modify human genetics without consent. Kai had focused on the geographical distribution of the planned deployment sites. These locations aren't random, she observed, identifying patterns in the distribution. They correspond to historical sites of significant evolutionary leaps in human development. Places where archaeological evidence suggests previous alien contact affected human progress. They're targeting populations with specific genetic markers, Ben realized, the Chaquetrix providing context to Kai's observation. Descendants of humans who were previously exposed to alien influence, naturally more receptive to the modifications they're planning. Which would increase success rates significantly, Hope added, reducing rejection and instability in the initial phase, and creating a modified population that could further spread the changes through natural reproduction, Gwen concluded, the horrifying elegance of the plan becoming clear. Alina's nanites had continued analyzing the technical specifications, eventually projecting a three-dimensional model of the dispersal system. There's potential vulnerability here, she indicated a specific component. The nanite programming requires continuous connection to the central network during initial deployment, a safety feature to prevent uncontrolled modification. Disrupt that connection, Ben began, and the entire system fails, Elena finished. But we'd need to interfere with 16 systems simultaneously to prevent deployment. Or target the source, Gwen suggested. The central transmission hub coordinating all 16 deployment sites. Which would be where? Hope questioned. Kai had AL pattern. Based on the geographic, AL distribution and historical significance of these sites, the most likely location for a central hub would be. She highlighted a point on the global display. Here, the convergence point of multi-PLE ley lines and the site of the earliest confirmed alien-human interaction approximately 12,000 years ago. The location indicated was a remote island in the South Pacific, officially designated as a Plummer Ecological Research Station, but clearly serving a more significant purpose in Project Chimera's implementation. Xylene's data confirms it, Ben noted, finding corresponding information in the transmission. The island facility houses the primary relay for the deployment network. All commands and monitoring flow through that location. Then that's our target, Gwen stated firmly. Neutralize the central hub, and we prevent all 16 deployments simultaneously. Not so simple, Hope cautioned. A facility that important will have security beyond anything we've encountered so far. Multiple redundancies, constant monitoring, specialized personnel. We infiltrated their research center, Elena pointed out. We can handle a relay station. The New Mexico facility was primarily scientific. Ben countered. This would be operational, likely with military-grade security protocols and personnel trained specifically for defense rather than research. The discussion continued, strategies proposed and rejected as they evaluated their options against the formidable challenges presented by the island facility. The accelerated timeline added urgency to their planning. With deployment teams already positioning equipment, they had perhaps 2 weeks before the system would be ready for activation. As dawn approached, they had established the outline of a potential operation, a coordinated approach that would utilize each team member's unique capabilities while accounting for the extraordinary security measures they would likely face. We'll need additional intelligence, Ben concluded as they finalized the preliminary plan. Detailed information about the facility's defenses, personnel rotations, communication protocols. I might have a source, Kai offered unexpectedly. A former colleague who joined the Plumbers Ecological Division 3 years ago. Last I heard, she was assigned to Pacific operations, possibly even this facility. Can you contact her securely? Gwen asked. Kai nodded. We maintained private communication channels for research purposes. If she's stationed there, she could provide invaluable inside information. Assuming she's not compromised by the same influence affecting other plumbers, Hope cautioned. Dr. Saito has always been resistant to organizational pressure, Kai replied with a hint of admiration. It's why her career advancement has been slower than her qualifications would warrant. She questions everything and everyone. Sounds like someone we need, Ben decided. Make contact, but carefully. No specific details about our plans or location. As the meeting concluded, team members dispersed to begin their assigned preparations. Elena and Gwen focused on developing technological and magical countermeasures for the security systems they might encounter. Kai established secure communication protocols for contacting her colleague. Hope returned to reinforcing the dimensional barriers protecting their base. Ben found himself momentarily alone at the central console, reviewing the accumulated information one final time before joining the preparations. The Chaquetrix pulsed gently against his wrist, projecting symbols that seemed to express both concern and determination. "I know," he murmured to the device. "The stakes keep getting higher. But that's nothing new for either of us." So. Fort footfall behind him announced Kai's return. She moved to stand beside him, studying the global display with its highlighted deployment sites. "You've changed since we last worked together," she observed without preamble. "More centered." Ben glanced at her, surprised by the assessment. Their previous collaboration had ended with her rather pointed critique of his impulsive approach to problem solving. "Circumstances change people," he replied simply. "True, but not always for the better." Kai gestured toward the Chaquetrix. "That device, it's more than just an evolution of the Omnitrix, isn't it? It's changing you as much as you're using it." The observation struck uncomfortably close to his earlier conversation with Hope. "That obvious, huh, to someone who studies evolutionary patterns across civilizations?" "Yes." Her tone remained professional rather than judgmental. "Integration with advanced technology follows recognizable progressions. What interests me is whether you're conscious of the process." "Becoming more so," Ben admitted. "Hope's been helping me establish boundaries, maintaining distinction between the device's influence and my own consciousness." Kai nodded approvingly. "Good. In my research, the most successful human technology integrations occur when both elements maintain their essential nature while creating something greater than either alone. Symbiosis rather than subsumption." The parallel to Ben's own developing understanding was striking. "You really have studied this extensively. My field specialization might seem narrow, but it ain't. Intersects with fundamental questions about humanity's relationship with advanced technology." Kai's expression became more thoughtful. "The artifacts I've documented show consistent patterns, civilizations that attempted to use alien technology to dominate natural processes ultimately collapsed, while those that adapted the technology to work with natural systems thrived. The difference between the corrupted network and the original flourishing," Ben noted. "Exactly. The same principles apply on individual levels as well as civilizational ones." Kai studied him with renewed interest. "You understand this intuitively now, don't you? The device is providing context that academic study takes years to develop." Ben nodded, appreciating her perception without defensiveness. "It's like having access to millennia of evolutionary wisdom compressed into accessible concepts. Not just technical knowledge, but philosophical understanding of how life adapts and evolves. A perspective we desperately need if we're going to counter Project Chimera effectively," Kai concluded. "Just maintain awareness of the process. Integration can become absorption if boundaries aren't maintained." "So I've been told," Ben replied with a slight smile, thinking of Hope's similar warning delivered in characteristically blunter terms. Their conversation was interrupted by the facility's alert system, this time activating with the high-priority signal indicating potential threat. Ben moved immediately to the security console, Kai following close behind. "Perimeter sensors detecting approaching aircraft," he announced as the others rushed to join them. "Unmarked transport, standard atmospheric engines, maintaining low altitude to avoid conventional radar." "Plumbers?" Gwen asked, already preparing defensive measures. "Negative," Elena replied, her nanites interfacing with the sensor array for enhanced analysis. "Configuration doesn't match any standard plumber vessel. Civilian technology with military modifications. The profile suggests mercenary operators." "How would mercenaries find this location?" Kai questioned. "I thought it was shielded from detection." "It is," Hope confirmed, seeking her dimensional barriers with concern. "Both conventionally and magically. They shouldn't be able to pinpoint us this precisely." Ben studied the approach vector of the incoming vessel, a sinking feeling forming in his stomach. "They're not tracking the facility directly. They're tracking something else, something that led them here." Understanding dawned on Gwen's face. "A tracking signal we missed. But we scanned everything when we established the base, equipment, vehicles, personal items." Not ever grimly, the Chaquetrix pulsing with heightened energy as it detected his concern. We didn't consider that they might have developed technology specifically designed to track the Chaquetrix itself. Is that possible? Elena asked. The energy signature is unlike anything in standard detection parameters. But not unlike the ancient network they've been studying, Hope pointed out. If they've adapted that technology, they might be able to detect echoes of the Chaquetrix's communication with similar systems. The implications settled heavily over the group. If the plumbers had developed such tracking capability, their hidden base was compromised not by any security failure, but by the very device central to their resistance efforts. Whoever they are, they'll be within visual range in approximately 4 minutes, Elena reported, monitoring the approaching aircraft. Options? Ben asked, looking to each team member in turn. Fight or flight, Gwen replied pragmatically. We can either defend this position or evacuate to a secondary location. The dimensional barriers can be extended to conceal our presence completely, Hope offered. But maintaining that level of concealment would prevent us from conducting any operations requiring energy signatures, essentia. LLY cutting us off from external contact. And if they have technology that can track the Chaquetrix specifically, concealment might only delay discovery, Elena added. Ben considered their options quickly, weighing the strategic value of their current base against the risks of confrontation with unknown forces. We need more information before deciding. Let's identify exactly who's coming for us and what capabilities they have. I can extend my dimensional perception to observe them without detection, Hope suggested. Ben nodded. Do it. Meanwhile, everyone prepare for potential evacuation. Essential equipment and data only. Be ready to move on 3 minutes' notice. As the team moved with practiced efficiency to secure critical resources, Hope established a scrying portal, a window through dimensional space that would allow observation without detection. The shimmering surface resolved into an image of the approaching aircraft, a modified civilian transport with reinforced hull, plating and weapons mounts visible beneath its wings. Definitely mercenary configuration, Elena confirmed, studying the vessel's modifications. High-end equipment though, not typical freelancers. The aircraft began a circular pattern above the general vicinity of their hidden base, clearly detecting something but unable to pinpoint the exact location due to their defensive measures. After completing several passes, a hatch opened in its underside, deploying what appeared to be specialized detection equipment. That's Tennyson technology, Gwen noted with concern. Advanced scanning capabilities, specifically designed to penetrate shielding. The scanner activated, emitting patterns of energy that pulsed through the surrounding terrain. Each pulse came closer to penetrating their concealment, the dimensional barriers rippling under the sophisticated probing. They're going to find us within minutes, Hope warned, reinforcing the barriers with additional magical energy. This technology is specifically calibrated to detect dimensional anomalies. Who would have access to such specialized equipment? Kai questioned. Even the plumbers rarely deploy Tennyson technology due to interstellar regulations. Not the plumbers, Ben realized as the scanner's energy signature registered with the Chaquetrix. Private contractors. The plumbers are using deniable assets to hunt us, keeping their direct involvement hidden in case of public exposure. As if confirming his assessment, figures began rappelling from the aircraft, humanoid operatives in advanced combat gear that bore N.O. official insignia but incorporated elements from multiple alien technologies. Their movements suggested professional military training combined with enhanced physical capabilities. 8 operators, Elena counted, armed with energy weapons and what appeared to be specialized containment devices. They're not here to kill, Ben concluded, watching as the team established a perimeter before activating additional scanning equipment. They want to capture us, or more specifically, capture the Chaquetrix. Which means we might be able to use that objective against them, Gwen suggested, a strategy already forming. If they're focused on acquisition rather than elimination, their tactical approach will prioritize containment over destruction. Ben nodded, understanding her thinking. We create a diversion. Make them believe they've located the Chaquetrix in one location while we evacuate through another. I can generate an energy signature mimicking the device, Hope offered. Not perfect, but potentially convincing enough to draw their attention temporarily. And I can use the nanites to interfere with their scanning equipment, Elena added. Create false positives in multiple locations to confuse their approach. The plan came together quickly, a coordinated deception that would hopefully provide enough cover for their evacuation to a secondary location Gwen had prepared as a contingency. As the mercenary team began systematically scanning the area directly above their hidden base, final preparations were completed. Everyone clear on their roles. Ben confirmed, receiving nods from each team member. All right. Hope initiates the diversion in 60 seconds. Elena disrupts their scanners 30 seconds after that. Gwen opens the evacuation portal once their attention is focused on the false signatures. We move quickly, in predetermined order. And if they break through before we complete evacuation? Kai asked pragmatically. Ben activated the Chaquetrix, reviewing available transformations. Then I'll give them something to chase while the rest of you get clear. Heroic self-sacrifice isn't part of the plan, Gwen stated firmly. We all get out together. It's not sacrifice, it's tactical. Ben countered. The Chaquetrix is what they're primarily tracking. If necessary, I can lead them away while you establish the secondary base, then rejoin once they're sufficiently diverted. Before further discussion could occur, Hope signaled readiness. Diversion deploying now. Magical energy flowed from her hands, coalescing into a sphere that mimicked the Chaquetrix's distinctive signature. The construct rose through the dimensional barriers, carefully calibrated to penetrate their own shielding without destabilizing it completely. The effect W. As immediate, mercenary scanners locked onto the signature, their team reorienting toward the apparent discovery. Communications between operators indicated excitement and focus, exactly as intended. Scanner disruption initiating, Elena announced, her nanites extending their influence beyond the base's protective barriers. The microscopic machines targeted the mercenaries' equipment, creating LSE readings and conflicting data across their detection grid. Confusion spread through the mercenary team as their scanners suddenly indicated multiple potential targets in different locations. Our organized approach deteriorated as subgroups split off to investigate contradictory readings. Evacuation portal activating, Gwen declared, magical energy forming a doorway to their secondary loca. Tian, a prepared safe house within her dimensional pocket, temporarily anchored to a physical location far from their current position. Kai moved through first, carrying essential research data and archaeological records. Elena followed, maintaining her nanite disruption even as she transferred to the new location. Hope remained with Gwen, their combined magical abilities required to maintain both the diversion and evacuation portal simultaneously. Ben prepared to follow, but paused as the Chaquetrix pulsed with urgent communication, a warning that registered clearly through their mental interface. The mercenaries had deployed a countermeasure to Elignal dampening field that was rapidly neutralizing the nanites' effectiveness. They're adapting faster than expected, he warned the others. Hope, Gwen, go now. I'll be right behind you. The women exchanged concerned glances but recognized the tactical necessity. As Elena's disruption failed completely, the mercenaries' confusion gave Ida renewed focus, their scanners once again converging on the hidden base's actual location. Don't play the hero, Ben, Gwen cautioned as she and Hope prepared to cross through the portal. 30 seconds. Then we're coming back for you. Won't need that long, Ben assured her, selecting a transformation from the Chaquetrix's interface. Just get the portal stabilized on the other side. As Gwen and Hope disappeared through the dimensional doorway, Ben initiated his transformation. Energy washed over him, reconfiguring his DNA into one of the Chaquetrix's evolved forms, the enhanced verse. Ion of Jetre they had designated Voidwing, optimized for atmospheric and space travel with unprecedented speed and maneuverability. The transformation completed just as the mercenaries deployed Brea Ching charges against the concealed entrance to their base. Ben moved quickly, gathering the last essential equipment before positioning himself near the evacuation portal. The plan was simple: wait until the last possible moment, ensuring the mercenaries detected the Chaquetrix's energy signature within the base, then escape through the portal before they could complete their breach. The timing would be critical, too early, and they might abandon their assault on the empty base to resume tracking, too late, and he risked capture before reaching the portal. The first breaching charge detonated, partially compromising the outer layer of their defenses. Alarms blared throughout the facility as automated systems registered the intrusion. Ben remained in position, Voidwing's enhanced sensory C. App abilities tracking the mercenaries, progress through multiple layers of security. A second charge detonated, followed by a third. The mercenary team had located the primary entrance and was methodically neutralizing its defenses. Their efficiency suggested military precision combined with advanced technical knowledge, far beyond typical hired operators. The Chaquetrix pulsed within Ben's transformed state, communicating that the evacuation portal had stabilized on the receiving end. Time to move. As he prepared to make his escape, however, something unexpected occurred. The mercenary team suddenly ceased their breaching efforts. All attention diverted to a new development. Through Voidwing's enhanced senses, Ben detected a communication signal overriding their tactical frequency, a new authority taking command of the operation. Then a voice echoed through their communication system, familiar despite distortion from the transmission. Stand down, Taurus unit. Target acquisition protocols suspended by direct order. Rook Blanco's unmistakable tone carried through the mercenaries' communication network. Ben froze, momentarily stunned by this unexpected development. Confirmation required, responded the mercenary leader. Operation Green Harvest has Magister-level authorization. Standing down requires equivalent override. Override authorization Rook Beta 79, came the response. Confirmation code transmitting now. A data packet transferred through their system, apparently satisfying the mercenary leader's requirement for verification. Acknowledged, the leader responded. Taurus unit standing down, awaiting further instructions. Ben remained motionless, Voidwing's form perfectly still as he processed this unexpected turn of events. The mercenaries had withdrawn from their breaching position, returning to their aircraft with evident confusion but strict compliance. The communication channel remained open, and after a moment of silence, Rook's voice returned, this time seemingly addressed directly to the facility itself. Ben Tennyson, if you are receiving this transmission, be advised that Taurus unit has been reassigned. They will depart location immediately and report that the tracking signature was determined to be a false positive. A pause, then. This communication is not being recorded or monitored. What happens next is your decision. The transmission ended, leaving Ben in stunned silence. After everything that had occurred, the betrayal, the pursuit, the revelation of Project Chimera's true nature, this apparent intervention from his former partner seemed impossible to reconcile with Rook's previous actions. The mercenaries were indeed retreating, their aircraft powering up for departure. Through Voidwing's enhanced vision, Ben observed their systematic deactivation of scanning equipment and containment devices, a genuine withdrawal rather than a tactical feint. The evacuation portal pulsed, Gwen's magical signature indicating growing concern from the other side. Ben made his decision, moving through the dimensional doorway just before it would have begun to destabilize from prolonged operation. He emerged, in their secondary location, a spacious structure within Gwen's pocket dimension, connected to a physical safe house in a location completely separate from their compromised base. The others gathered around him immediately, expressions of relief giving way to confusion when he explained what had occurred. Rook called off the mercenaries. Gwen questioned, disbelief evident in her tone. The same, Rook who stood with Hulka when they tried to capture you initially. The very same, Ben confirmed, reverting to human form. He used official override codes to redirect the entire operation. It could be a trap. Hope suggested pragmatically, a more sophisticated approach to tracking us to a new location. Possible, Ben acknowledged, but why allow us to escape cleanly when they had us cornered? They could have completed their breach within minutes. Elena had been monitoring the situation through nanites left at the original base. The mercenary team has completely withdrawn. Their aircraft is returning to what appears to be a plumber auxiliary facility 200 miles from our location. And no tracking devices were deployed. Kai asked. None that the nanites detect, Elena confirmed. Though their technology is sophisticated enough that absolute certainty is impossible. The implications of Rook's intervention settled over the group gradually, a potential fracture within the plumber hierarchy. Or perhaps evidence that not all within the organization had succumbed to the corrupting influence of the ancient technology. This changes our tactical approach, Ben noted after thoughtful consideration. If there are elements within the plumbers questioning Project Chimera, we might find allies where we expected only enemies. Or it could be an elaborate deception, Hope cautioned, designed specifically to create false hope and lower our guard. Either way, we proceed carefully, Gwen decided, assuming the worst while remaining open to potential allies. Ben nodded agreement, though the Chaquetrix pulsed with what felt like cautious optimism, a sense that the corruption, while pervasive, might not be absolute. Perhaps, like the original network millennia ago, pockets of resistance remained even within compromised systems. We continue with our plan to target the central relay, he stated, bringing the discussion back to their primary objective. But we also explore this new development. Elena, can you establish a secure one-way monitoring of plumber communications that might reveal Rook's status and activities? The nanites can interface with their lower security channels without detection, she confirmed. Though anything classified would require more direct access. Start with what you can access safely, Ben instructed. We need information without exposing our position or intentions. As the team reorganized in their new location, establishing systems and security protocols, Ben found himself drawn to a quiet corner where he see indications of Rook's intervention privately. The Chaquetrix provided insight through their mental interface, suggesting patterns of resistance that had emerged during the original corruption of the ancient network. Just as the current plumbers had been influenced by the technology without their knowledge, some among the original creators had initially been affected by the corruption before developing resistance. Consciousness, given time, could recognize and reject external manipulation, an encouraging possibility if Project Chimera's influence operated on similar principles. Gwen joined him after a while, her expression thoughtful. Thinking about Rook, among other things, Ben admitted. The Chaquetrix is showing me historical parallels, how the original corruption spread through the ancient network. But also how pockets of resistance formed. You think Rook might be developing resistance to whatever influence Project Chimera exerts? It's possible, Ben replied cautiously. Equally possible that this is a more sophisticated attempt to capture us. Gwen studied him for a moment before asking, what does your instinct tell you? Not the Chaquetrix's historical analysis, but your own feeling about Rook specifically. The question gave Ben pause. Despite their deepening connection, he had been careful to maintain the boundaries Hope had helped him establish, distinguishing between the device's influence and his own judgment. Considering Rook from his personal perspective rather than through historical parallels required shifting that balance. My instinct says it's genuinely him, Ben finally answered. For all our recent differences, Rook has always maintained his own moral code. If he's begun to recognize Project Chimera's true nature and its influence on the plumbers, he would act, carefully, methodically, but decisively, like calling off a mercenary team while maintaining plausible deniability, Gwen suggested. Exactly, it's his style, working in the system while finding ways to maintain his integrity. Ben sighed, running a hand through his hair. But that doesn't mean we can trust him completely. Even if he's developing resistance, he's still operating within a compromised organization. So we proceed with caution, Gwen concluded. But perhaps with slightly more hope than before. Hope, ironically enough, seemed the appropriate word. In a conflict involving corrupted evolutionary guidance, the capacity for resistance, for maintaining individual consciousness against external influence, represented perhaps their most significant advantage. As they rejoined the others to continue planning their approach to the central relay facility, Ben felt the weight of leadership settle more comfortably on his shoulders. The team was calming together, each member contributing unique perspectives and capabilities to a common purpose. The betrayal that had fractured his world had also created space for new alliances, new understanding. Chaquetrix pulsed gently against his wrist, projecting the symbol of the flourishing briefly before subsiding. Balance rather than dominance. Cooperation rather than conquest. The ancient wisdoms say, increasingly relevant to their current struggle, not just against Project Chimera, but for the very nature of evolution itself. Shadows gathered as new allies emerged. The battle for humanity's evolutionary future had only begun. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.